across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 1st of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show on Talk, where we're on DAB+, we're on your smart speaker, we're on YouTube. And yes, it's not Dr. David Bull. I'm afraid he's ill, so it's me, James Max. I'm with you both today and tomorrow, and today I'm going to be with you until 10 o'clock. So, this morning, very shortly, I'm going to be joined live in the studio by former Labour advisor Scarlett McGuire. We'll be going through the papers and the front pages. Is there anything else in the news other than Donald Trump, you may ask? Well, yes, there is. We might find out about the minister who quit over aid. We'll be talking about how many people in the UK dislike biscuit dunking in tea. I know, it's what everybody's talking about. We'll also be talking about the future of Bond and, in entertainment news, considering the Oscars and the Brit Awards as well. All of that, plus plenty more coming up. And this morning, after Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America and Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, I want to know from you, how do you respond to the last 48 hours? So, all sorts of things to talk to you about, and also, dare I suggest, that because David Bull is normally here, and he loves to talk about things which are pertinent, maybe to the day in hand, I suppose today I have to talk about the 3 exciting things that maybe you need to know. It's St David's Day today, so happy that. Wales celebrates its patron saint. A parade, apparently, will take place in Cardiff today to celebrate and remember Darisant, the son of a nun who could perform miracles. I mean, I'm so excited about that. Yeah. OK, that's enough of that. Talking of Wales, it's National Welsh Corgi Day. Adored by the late Queen Elizabeth II. Oh, and in doggy news, by the way, we'll find out who's got a new dog. Seriously, it's in the papers today. It's a very important story. Anyway, the Queen was known, or the late Queen was known to have more than 30 of the short-legged dogs. Corgi means dwarf dog in Welsh. Anyway, talking of animals, it's nothing to do with a nice beaver story on one of the front pages of the papers today. No, it's also World Pig Day, in honour of the smart but often misunderstood swine. Pigs can be domesticated, and legend has it that in 1772, they were able to tell the time, count, and make some tricks on demand. And this pig was called the Learned Pig. Oh, shit. Right. OK, quite enough of that. Anyway, let me just refresh on the slightly more serious topic of conversation this morning. So, Keir Starmer, he visited the United States. Everything appeared to be going well. He went into the Oval Office, he took out the envelope, big parade, all excitement. Oh, I've got a letter for you, Mr. President. And Mr. President was all over Keir Starmer, and Keir Starmer was all over the President, and it was like, oh, we're looking west to our international relations now. And then, of course, in that letter, there was the invitation by King Charles to come on an unprecedented second visit to the United Kingdom. Well, 24 hours later, and it's all changed. Volodymyr Zelensky, he goes into the Oval Office and within 10 minutes, in front of all the world's press, turns into a verbal bust-up and leads to the headlines that we see today. Meltdown in Oval Office. Trump tells Zelensky he's risking World War III. So, how do you respond to the last 48 hours? And when I ask about that question, what I'm really saying is, with the UK, do we still tilt west towards the United States of America? Should we still be focused on trying to secure a trade deal with the country with whom we have the biggest single trade relationship? Of course, we have very significant relationships on trade with the EU. But in terms of our international trade with one single country, it is the US. Do we tilt towards that? Or do we support Volodymyr Zelensky and tilt east, recognising that Europe's eastern borders are more important? Or can we do both? But how do you respond to the last 48 hours? Are we at risk of World War III? Are we seeing a meltdown of a president? Are we seeing the true colours of Donald Trump? Or do you support him with his views? Maybe you never supported the idea of giving our military, financial and other support to Ukraine. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. How do you respond to the last 48 hours? The phone lines are clear. It will get busy. So if you want to have your say, give me a call now and we will get you on air. I want to hear what you think about what's happened. This is the most extraordinary performance. I don't think, regardless of whether you're cross or not, I don't think that any individual should speak in the way that Donald Trump did to Vladimir Zelensky. I don't think that it ever should have been conducted in this way in front of the world's media, and I'm not quite sure what anybody thought it would achieve. So I find it absolutely extraordinary and horrifying that we have this presentation. Having said that, we do need to see peace in the East, and we do need to see a breakthrough. But I genuinely find the last 24 hours certainly difficult to comprehend, and I also question whether or not the great visit that we saw from Keir Starmer over to the United States of America, whether indeed that's actually paid off or whether it's all paled into insignificance. Anyway, I'm joined live in the studio by former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Very good morning to you. Thank you for coming in. Meltdown in the Oval Office. Trump tells Zelensky he's risking World War III. I mean, he's got a point.
Well, he's got a point, but as far as Trump goes, is it's his way or the highway, right? Is that he wants to do a deal with Russia, and quite clearly only those two matter, and he's going to leave Ukraine out of it, but Ukraine has got to pay America back. I mean, this isn't about peace. And when Keir Starmer said, but, you know, we would like some American backup, he went, oh no, you don't need it, because I know that Putin will keep his word. Well, Putin has broken everything that he's ever signed. So actually, we were not on the road to peace until we had a proper negotiation.
But isn't part of the problem here that you've got Putin, who, as you say, doesn't necessarily stick to the words that he agrees? You've got Keir Starmer, who flip-flops and melts, and you've got Donald Trump, who behaves like a small child. I mean, you've got three politicians, none of whom we can trust.
No, hold on. I really don't think you can blame Keir for any of this, right? I mean, what we've really got is that both Keir Starmer and Macron, I mean, were trying to get the Americans to come over. We're supposed to be allies. We're supposed to be backing Ukraine, right? The Americans are the allies of Ukraine. But
if you listen to anything that Donald Trump has said, and in particular, I mean, you go back to 2023 when he talked about various things, he's never supported Ukraine wholly in their defence. He's never quite taken the view of the rest of the Western nations. We kind of should have known that this was his viewpoint.
No, we did know. I mean, there was no question. I mean, when Donald Trump got elected, you know, I said two things: Ukraine is in trouble, and so are the Palestinians in Gaza, and that's you know that's where we are. But actually, so. The reason that one of the many reasons that Macron and Keir Starmer went over was to try and get some American backing, to talk about, you know, that actually if you do a proper peace plan, you know, you will go down in history. That, I mean, it was soft soaping. Now, Vladimir Zelensky does not do soft soaping. We know that. He thinks. He seriously believes that Ukraine is fighting a fight for the West, not just fighting a fight to stop the Russians completely taking over them.
Keir Starmer's got to pick a side. I mean, you might say, oh, well, you know, he can be the glue between America and Europe. Given what's happened, that idea and notion has been blown out the water. So who does he turn to? Does he turn and tilt more into Europe, who are saying the same things when it comes to Ukraine, or does he turn to the US, who's the UK's biggest partner and who he's handed out an invitation for a state visit to?
Well, he's made it absolutely clear that he's backing Ukraine. I mean, that's what he said at 10 o'clock last night.
Should we keep the invitation to Donald Trump for the state visit?
I think we have to. I mean, I think what we have to do is grown-up diplomatic politics, which is exactly what didn't happen last night, right? What we've got to do is we've got to say, we've got to at least have a pretense that there is absolutely no point in Keir Starmer or Britain insulting the Americans, right? But what we can do is exactly what Keir Starmer has done up to now, is say there are red lines, and my red line is that Britain backs Ukraine, and that's really important.
And what Donald Trump will say to that is, fine, you do it, you pay for it.
Yeah,
okay, how much backing should we be prepared to give in order to fill the void that may very well come should the US back out?
We know we can't fill the void. I mean, we know that Europe cannot fill the void.
So what do we do? Then what Trump says in terms of doing a deal with Putin, we have to.
We have to try and do our best, don't we?
Sure.
I mean, that's the problem is you're trying to get me to go black and white. We're in a terrible position, right? We're in an absolutely terrible position. There is absolutely no question that Britain and the rest of Europe cannot get their defence up to anything like the Americans within 3 months.
Fine, I understand that, but ultimately we look for our leaders to make those choices and make those decisions. So what I'm asking you is less about black and white, and it's more about how do you respond to the last 24 hours on the basis that we thought 48 hours ago that things were going pretty well. We thought after Macron's visit to the White House, after Keir Starmer's visit to the White House, that maybe Donald Trump was at least going to give or continue with the backing that America had given to Europe and on Ukraine. We thought that we might, as in this country, might escape the Trump tariffs and all this nonsense that seems to be going on. And we thought that relations were perhaps better than we'd hoped for. The last 24 hours throws all of that into disarray, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think the last I think as far as tariffs and as far as the state visit and relations, I mean, Keir Starmer went over there and made it clear that he and Trump disagreed on Ukraine. He didn't throw a tantrum, right? He just said, this is what I feel about Ukraine.
Because Donald Trump basically has said, America has given billions and billions to Ukraine.
He has exaggerated. Can I say he has exaggerated? It's not. It's 200 billion, right?
It's quite a lot of money.
And Europe has given exactly the same, right? It's not that America has given more. They're about the same. And on individual countries, no, it's not. But actually, Europe and the United States have backed Ukraine.
Sure. OK. Let's just have a look at how the front pages have dealt with this, because it's one of those days where, frankly, it's all the same stuff. So, FT Weekend, Zelensky's White House talks break down in blaze of acrimony. And when they use that sort of language on the front page of either the Times saying meltdown in the Oval Office, the FT Weekend, White House talks breakdown in blaze of acrimony. It's sort of serious. We're not talking tabloid headlines here. Shouting match in the Oval Office, says the Weekend. Trump tries to humiliate Zelensky live on TV. Daily Mail says a spectacle to horrify the world. Should we be horrified by this? I mean, does it mean that for the next however many years that Trump is in power, and there are discussions about whether or not he's going to stay on after his official term. I mean, there is all that discussion, and I'm sure people will speculate, and there are those who really dislike him, and all of that. I don't necessarily see that side of it, but there are plenty of people who look at this as a horrifying world event. I mean, they've never seen anything like this from an American president.
Well, yeah, I mean, you and I have, we've both seen the videos, right? We've both seen it. We have never. Every reporter who reported on it said, in my 35 years, I have never seen anything. I mean, it was awful, actually.
Okay.
It was a complete wind-up.
If you were advising Vladimir Zelensky, would you say, ask for a meeting to go back? Is that what Donald Trump wanted? That he didn't like the position of Ukraine, thinking that they can't move at all? Because that's kind of what he does, is that Donald Trump knows that in order to get a deal done, you can't resolutely stand by your original. You've got to be prepared to compromise to an extent. And his break it and then mend it tactic is very old in the business. That you basically you pull apart a deal to such an extent that everybody walks out the room and goes, this is never going to happen. And what that does is it then allows for a bit of a reset, because it then allows people to go, okay, I've got to move a bit. So which bit do I move? So, for example, if Zelensky thought that he was going to have his original borders maintained and that nothing was going to be given as any kind of sop to Putin, then Trump was saying, if you want to get a deal done, that's not the way to do it. And this is the way that I get you to come to the table. Well, is this a clever tactic?
No, I think it was a tantrum. I think it was and I think it was completely wound up by J.D. Vance, who clearly doesn't like Europe, doesn't like Ukraine.
I'm not sure he even knows where Europe is.
Well, he did go there to tell us all how awful we are. He did go to Munich to make a speech about how dreadful the Europeans were.
I mean, should we be more worried about the fact that Donald Trump is in the White House, or that J.D. Vance might end up in the White House?
I think the fact that J.D. Vance is there is much more worrying.
You've got to pick a conversation that you're going to have lunch, and you're either going to have lunch with J.D. Vance or Elon Musk.
I think in the end, J.D. Vance is the stronger person.
No, I'll go Musk.
No, I think Musk...
Because he's done things. He invented PayPal. He's done SpaceX. He invented Tesla.
He's going to fall out with... Musk and Donald Trump are going to fall out with each other. They're both massive, massive egos, and both of them are all over the place, and they flip-flop away. J.D. Vance knows what he wants, right? J.D. Vance actually made yesterday much worse. If you watch it, he's a man with ideology.
So then why would you want it? Well, okay.
Well, what I'm saying is he's the more influential one.
Okay,
right?
So The Guardian leads with, "You're gambling with World War III," says Trump. Is he right?
Well, no, I mean, I think he's only right if that's what we allow to happen. I mean, you talk about compromise. I mean, actually, we know that if there is a peace deal, that Ukraine has to give up some land. But what Zelensky wants is he wants a peacekeeping force to keep the peace, rather than Putin taking the rest of Ukraine. And that's what Putin wants. He wants Ukraine.
Shock and war. Peace hopes in tatters, says The Mirror. Daily Express, bust up leaves Trump's peace talks in crisis. And The Telegraph, make a deal or we're out. Shouting match at the White House as Trump tells Zelensky, come back when you're ready for peace. Right, we will turn on to two other stories on the front pages in a few moments' time. One, which deals with beavers. The other, which deals with a very good friend of mine. That is coming up. Also, we will be taking your calls. I want to hear from you this morning. So, Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and then Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. How do you respond to the last 48 hours? The telephone number is 0344 499 1000. You can send me a text if you like, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. You can tweet me if you like, or X I think it's called, at talkTV. And if you want to send a WhatsApp message, it's the same as the telephone number, is 0344 499 1000. We take your calls next on Talk.
announced resignation from the cabinet of a Labour minister. It's Annalise Dodds, the development minister. She has resigned over the government's cuts to the foreign aid budget, cuts that were made to fund an increase in defence spending. A massive increase, but it wasn't, was it? Because early this week, all Sir Keir Starmer was reveal that international aid would be cut from 0.5% to 0.3% of GDP. And that money would go to defence instead, which is rising from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP.
So does Putin want to stop this war, or does he not? Because if he doesn't want to stop this war, then, putting our nose up his backside, which is effectively what all this stuff has been that Trump has been doing, is not going to change anything. If he wants to stop this war, then we don't need to be doing all... I mean, this is then a simple negotiation of interests. What are his interests? What are our interests? What are Ukraine's interests? And let's go to the negotiating table.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 23 minutes past 6 o'clock. It's Weekend Breakfast this Saturday morning with me, James Max. I'm with you till 10 on Talk. So, asking you the question about Keir Starmer's visit to the United States. All seemed to be going so well. And then Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. It's on the front pages of every single newspaper, tabloids, broadsheets, you name it. Why? Because it's the most extraordinary set of circumstances. So I want to know how you respond to the last 48 hours. Do we, for example, think that the relationship and the peace talks are over? Do you think that a deal can be done between Ukraine and Russia? Where do you think we should be leaning when it comes to our relationships? And indeed, is this the beginning of World War III, or have we already started it? 0344 499 1000. You've also been sending lots of messages on 87222. I'll come to those in a moment. But let's go to your calls now. Barry is in Norwich. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, James. Good morning, Scott. Yeah, just a couple of questions on the last 48 hours. First of all, regarding Keir Starmer.
Language like that, but I think we'll forgive it. But
Told off by fun.
I know what the word you were looking for was rollicking.
Rollicking, that's it. Yes. Yeah,
there we go.
And I don't like the idea of Starmer pulling out a state visit letter from the King, because I'm not a royalist by a long shot, but the King is supposed to be neutral, isn't he, from political stuff?
Well, you say that, but then any invitation that goes from Buckingham Palace will always be vetted by the parliamentary party in power of the day. So it's always been part of our soft power that we've used those kinds of invitations, and to think otherwise, it doesn't necessarily mean that the King has to be political or otherwise. It means that we are using our soft power in order to influence, and we know that Donald Trump likes the pageantry and all that business.
Oh yeah, no, I see him last time he was there. Yeah, he loved it. Yeah, but,
I dare say that we're going to see. Donald Trump didn't have much time either for London's mayor, and I have to say I concur with him on that.
Well, I live in London.
Well, you're quite lucky, because I'm afraid that Sadiq Khan has ruined the place. I mean, the man is an idiot. I'm sorry, I can't think of any other word to describe his policies or his approach to whether it's allowing the protests that he has done on our streets in respect of the Palestinian protests, which I think are just offensive to most people, or alternatively providing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits where they don't need to be, digging up the roads where he doesn't need to do them, putting tax on poor people who genuinely don't need to pay them, the myth that somehow he's cleaning up the air with all these nonsense. I don't even know where to start with the man, and he has no principles.
Just one more thing about Starmer before I go on to the next bit. He mentioned his free speech and how free speech was, ingrained in this country, and there's no problem with free speech. Hello? I don't know what planet he's living on, but you see people getting banged up for hurty words on Facebook. You see MPs getting 10-week prison sentences then suspended.
But we have a different situation from the US, and I'm not sure which is more preferable. So we have our system here in the UK where perhaps people do have an element of free speech, and in the US they like to think that they have free speech, but they also have very expensive lawyers. And the problem is, because of the legal system in the US, it actually curtails free speech to such an extent, and the wokerati have gone completely mad. So I don't know where in the world one has better free speech, whether it's here in the UK or over there in the US. I think maybe if you're a parliamentarian and you have the ability to say what you like in the House.
Yeah.
That could be it. But let's get back to this last 48 hours.
One more thing with Trump. I just think two things. Zelensky has to be at the table if they're discussing Ukraine. It's his country. He has to be in the room. He can't not be in the room. That's just, not really a done thing. And I think the only person who probably had a smile on his face last night after watching that, which I could only say, I don't know what it was in the White House last night, was Vladimir Putin. He's probably laughing his head off.
He might very well, but I mean, do you think that Vladimir Putin? I mean, there is a huge amount of conspiracy, particularly on the internet, which is a wonderful place to go if you just want to make stuff.
I just try and stay away from it.
Maybe, but there's a huge amount of discussion about why it is that Donald Trump seems to have this thing for Putin. Is it because of the money? Is it because of the power? Or is it because Vladimir Putin has something on Donald Trump which is so awful that we'd just be shocked and horrified if we actually knew? I mean, we'll probably never get to that truth. But do you think that Putin has something on Trump, or do you think that Trump simply admires him in the same way that he was very happy to go off to North Korea to meet Kim Jong-un?
I like Donald Trump, right? And, but he went down in my estimations last night on the TV a little bit. But
I think he could have said what he said without being, without losing his rag and without losing his temper. I mean, he could have said, the US has provided an enormous amount of support, and you have to convince us as to why it is that we're going to do this, because we want to see peace, which means that you're going to have to compromise. Now, I think it was a mistake having J.D. Vance in the room at the same time. I think it should have been one-on-one.
Yeah, I think it should have been away from the cameras. But, this country as well, Keir Starmer says, we're going to fund Ukraine till whenever. Well, you know what? I ain't being funny when I say this. As much as I feel sorry for the people in Ukraine, we cannot keep funding Ukraine from now to the end of time.
But you say that. OK, but what is the danger to us? Think about it this way, Barry. What's the first thing that you buy? If you get a new house or a flat, and you've got your mortgage in place and all that sort of business, what's the first thing that you do when you buy that house or that flat? Is it that you fill the larder with a whole load of food and all that sort of stuff, or do you go off and buy insurance?
Oh yeah, but it's a bit.
So which would you do first?
Depends what sort of insurance you want. Do you want third party or fully comp?
Well, no, but that's a car. So insurance isn't third party or fully comp. You go and get insurance to protect your home against the unlikely event that it burns down or that it gets broken into. And that's surely what the defence of the realm is about, which is above all the other things that we have to do in our nation. We know that we've got 7 million people on NHS waiting lists. We know that we've got people living rough on the streets. We know that we've got a social care system in crisis. We know that we've got potholes left, right and centre. However, the defence of this nation surely has to be number one, and that's why you would take the insurance policy first and fill up the larder second.
Well, the defence of the nation is being breached every day by boats coming into the country. So, where do you go with it? I just don't believe.
Well, then doesn't it make it even more important? If that's your view, which I have to say I concur when it comes to dealing with our borders, if that's the case, then the insurance policy is what we need, and more spending on defence is what we have to do, even at the expense of other things.
Oh, I believe we need to spend more on defence. Of course I do. I mean, I remember, I was a child in the 1980s, and I remember, we had a massive army and navy and services. It's been cut to the bare bones. So if someone wants to send our troops into Ukraine as a peacekeeping force, is there enough to do the job?
No, of course not. No. Well, that's another story. Talking of other stories, Barry, I need to move on, but thank you very much indeed for your call. So that's Barry in Norwich. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. Oh, good! It's Lenny in Ashford. Hello, Lenny.
Good morning, James.
Good morning. Have you missed me?
Yes, I have, James.
Oh, well, I almost missed you too, Lenny. So, what could you tell me? How do you respond to the last 48 hours?
Well, I think it's a frightening situation, and Starmer could end up with more egg on his face than he's ever had before.
Right.
And we've got to unite with Europe.
So how do you respond to this? So Tony's been in touch and said it was hilarious to see Zelensky given a roasting by President Trump and J.D. Vance.
Well, I think it was two snake oil salesmen bullying a patriot.
Ukraine cannot win against Russia. The war has crippled the USA and British economies. Trump has now told the EU, Ukraine, you support war, you pay for what we've done.
Well, we've got to... it's like the Second World War. We couldn't afford that. And we didn't stop paying for that until 2006.
Pete the Mole says it's an American thing. The disrespect is towards the actual office of the United States. The Oval Office is considered sacred to the Americans. None of it should have been done on camera. Every war has situations like that, but they should be aired in private.
Well, I think it needed to be done in private, on camera. It's actually showed the public what the true face of Trump and America, and it is good that we know rather than all the toffee that they when they shake hands and part friends and all things like that. That was really informative to Europe on the true face of America.
Alan in Merseyside says Starmer in charge of Europe in the Ukrainian war. I'm not frightened, I'm terrified.
Yes, well, I mean, what we got to do is go through Europe and find a Churchill.
We've got to do what?
We've got to find a Churchill.
Where are you going to find that?
No.
But you listen to the wokerati, they can't bear Churchill. They don't like that patriotic response to the world.
But that's what Europe needs. We need somebody who will stand up to Trump and Putin, because otherwise the world...
Yeah, but Lenny, you can only stand up to them if you've got the military backing to do so. So it sounds like we're going to have to spend not 2.5% of GDP on defence. It looks like we're going to have to go to 5%, and we might be sitting in the wings for a good decade until we've got the firepower to actually get to the table. Otherwise, who wants to listen to us? Nobody cares.
We got to stop wasting money.
How do we stop wasting money? We've got Keir Starmer in charge. He's hosing it.
Well, I think zero contracts that they're trying to bring, I think that's lies and corruption. And if we stop that, it will give us a chance to recoup some money, save some money, and.
But how are we going to save? How are we going to save the billions? I mean, if you have a look at the bill that we have for all of the social care and everything else, it's doubled. And we've kept military spending at the same sort of level. So it's about 54 billion that we spend on that. And yet our social security bill is over 300 billion. We're spending so much, topping up people's wages, sorting out their housing, sorting out their pensions, paying off debt, you name it. The money's streaming out the door, Lenny. What can we do?
Well, we got to put our country in order and correctly.
How?
One thing, we got to stop all these boats and immigration.
Stop the boats and immigration, right? Okay.
Because they're only parasites, and the money that we're spending on them and the money we're spending on zero, we would have a chance.
So bin net zero and stop the boats.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Lenny. You made it loud and clear. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Good to chat to Lenny in Ashford. Perhaps you'd like to join the conversation. Tell me how you respond to the last 48 hours. Tell me that after Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and indeed Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, how do you respond? What should our response be? 0344 499 1000. We take more of your calls next. Plus, we'll be getting some more stories from Scarlett Maguire from the papers. That's all coming up here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So it's 6:39. Very good morning. Going through the papers this morning with former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. We've been having a look at all sorts of different stories. Scarlett, we will be coming back to our conversation about Keir Starmer and his visit to the United States, Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump, where I've been asking the question, how do you respond to the last 48 hours? Do you think the UK needs to change its foreign policy, its defence spending, whatever? 0344 499 1000 on that. I've sort of managed to get through some of the texts. A lot of them are coming in. I will deal with as many of those as I possibly can. 87222, start your text with the word talk, and you can send me an X at talkTV or at the James Max. And you can also send me a WhatsApp message if you can't be bothered to wait. I will come to your calls, promise. So if you call me now, 0344 499 1000, we'll get as many of you on air between now and 10 as we possibly can. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to some of the stories which are sort of popping up in the papers, which are away from the front pages, which are all about the shouting match.
Yes, absolutely.
So, former Labour advisor, which bit of the Labour Party would you put yourself in?
Soft left, I should think.
Soft
Yeah.
left. So
we're going to talk about Annalisa Dodds.
we are in a minute.
Right.
But we're going to just veer off in another direction first. Reform UK have edged in front of Labour in opinion polling, voters saying that they favoured Nigel Farage's party over others. This is research for the BMG research poll. Reform on 27%, ahead of Labour on 26%, Kemi Badenoch 22%, Lib Dems 12%, Green 8%, SNP 3%, and others minimal. This must be after the election victory last July. It makes that victory rather hollow, doesn't it?
No, I mean, this is a poll, and the polls, I'm not saying it's wrong, because I mean this is what the polls are saying, and I think
this underestimates the strength of Reform support.
Well, you might. We don't know. I mean,
we don't. But if
you don't know
if you
any more
speak to
than
any
I
pollster,
do.
which I've done, so I've spoken to the chief exec of one of the big polling companies, and I said, "Can we take these polls as gospel?" And they said, "Actually, no." And they said, for the first time, we are re-evaluating how we do our polls, because many Reform voters and people who will be motivated to vote, who have not voted before, they are not in our gambit, in our orbit. And we think that we have underestimated Reform's popularity by at least 5%.
Okay, so I am old enough to remember the Social Democratic Party.
No, me too.
That surged. I mean, exactly. So I would not be surprised if Reform won the next by-election. Certainly, if the guy who punched the man, I would think it's very likely Reform would win. I think they're going to probably win the mayor of I think it's Lincolnshire, and I think they'll do very well in the local elections up north. I mean,
despite the fact that some of them are cancelled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that they so I'm not saying they're not going to, but I think they're then going to peak. And then the problem with Reform is it's got 7 MPs, it's run by one man, right, and who has said that he doesn't really like internal democracy. And then that's when you get everybody splitting about what they think and what. I mean, you look at the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, it used to be wider in the Conservatives, but there's a lot of different thoughts about different things, and when that comes to Reform, it's going to be problematic.
But isn't it also problematic that Labour, on one hand, they keep talking about their inheritance, and that's totally understandable. And I think a lot of people in this country were absolutely fed up with the Tory infighting, with the lack of leadership or strong leadership, with the lack of policy, all sorts of things that you can point your finger at the Tories. However, Labour, through their decisions, have either gone ideological, VAT on school fees, or they've gone just stupid in terms of taking away winter fuel allowance, not necessarily at the right level. So, for example, do I think that millionaire pensioners should receive the winter fuel allowance? No, actually. But they set the bar wrong.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if you're on 12 or 14 or 16,000 pounds a year, you shouldn't be having that taken away. And in fact, what they should have done is they should have said, we're going to right the wrongs over a period of time to sort out our pension system so it actually pays out.
Yeah. Look, the winter...
Let's hunt for net zero. Miliband doing all these nonsense.
No.
The man spouts nonsense.
You and I completely disagree on that. I mean, I do think
I'm right.
I do think climate change is real, right? And I
didn't say it wasn't.
And I do think we have to. Well, if climate change is real, we then have to change the way we live.
Yes,
and actually,
but you don't do it in the way that it's being done. It is an extremely expensive, foolish pursuit of a notional target that is not going to make a scrap of difference.
No.
What we should be doing is doing what we do in this country very well, which is to invent, create, come up with the alternative, and then when the alternative is there, then you move to it. You don't take away what you have before you're able to take it away.
They're not taking away. So what is important is what we should have been doing since 2010, because that's what was promised, was insulating homes. Right? That's the biggest thing.
Then if people want to do it, let them do it.
No, because a lot of people...
Why does the nation have to pay for that?
Because if you're poor, you can't afford to insulate your home. That's why. And those are the people who have the highest heating bills because they've got uninsulated.
Sure. Then do that first before you take away the heating allowance. I mean, it makes no sense. They have. They've taken away hundreds of pounds from people who genuinely need it.
No, the winter fuel allowance, right, is not about net zero.
Correct.
And if you let me say what I think should have been done about the winter fuel allowance, is I think it should have been done differently. I think it probably should have been taxed. I mean, I absolutely agree that most rich pensioners, and I don't just mean millionaires, most rich pensioners shouldn't have. If you're on 40% tax, then actually you don't need £200.
So we agree on that. But you see, this is the point, and this is the point, which is Labour have performed so many home, scored in their own goal on so many occasions since they came to power. They've made a lot of mistakes, haven't they?
They've made it. I think that was a mistake, and I think that it was done. It was done without thinking the whole thing through. I mean, certainly. I mean, one of the big problems, and we all know that it's true, was the money. I mean, you talk to any minister about things that they'd like to do, and they just go, "But there is no money."
Yeah, but you see, this is again nonsense. Because, first of all, the 22 billion black hole that they talked about, if you actually look at what they've cobbled together in order to spin that narrative, some of it was of their own making. So, for example, if you want to give people pay rises, absolutely understand. But you do need to change some of the working practices. As an individual who used to work in the private sector and still does, I look at some of the horrifying conditions that we, the taxpayer, fund when it comes to services. So I would be saying, absolutely, I want to make sure your wages now track and that we have restoration. Get it, particularly with doctors and all these things. But I also want to see changes in working practices. I think some of the working practices within the NHS, within the civil service, are a disgrace in today's day and age.
Well, the biggest problem, right, was that actually the government didn't set aside any money for the pay rises. So in education, nothing was set aside for teachers' pay.
Yeah,
right?
But the first thing they did was they suddenly said, but hang on a second. Before they did anything, they did two things. So they made school places more difficult to find in certain areas by sticking on VAT on school fees, which was an ideological move.
Which was in
punishing.
the manifesto.
It was in the manifesto.
It was in the manifesto.
It's stupid.
It was no secret, and
it's stupid.
It's incredibly popular. Actually,
it's not. It's incredibly popular by those who've got green-eyed monster mentality. It's pure jealousy. It's the politics of benefits. It's a disgrace.
James, if you look at the polling, right, it has always been a very popular policy, right? And everybody's known throughout the time that that's what Labour was going to do. There was no secret, and there are very few.
I'm not saying, okay, all right, well then let's talk about the other stupid policy then. Let's talk about national insurance. Disgrace.
I think that what they should have done is they should have been braver, and when the Tories said we're going to lower national insurance for the employee by 3%, they should have said, we can't afford it.
But they didn't. And you talk about manifestos saying, oh, well, it's all right to stick VAT on private school fees. Because I don't think that the general British public, those who support it, first of all, I take the view that people should be free to do what they like with their money. Secondly, when you talk about fee-paying schools, a lot of people who go to fee-paying schools aren't just, the wealthy elite. They'll always go. It's actually people who have special needs children who the state system does not cope, does not give the education, this great opportunity that we talk about. It doesn't give it to them. So for those poor parents who have desperately struggled that their child has a particular requirement or otherwise, educational, this is the politics of envy at its very worst.
No, James, let's just...
Let's pause with that thought. We'll come to you and we'll get your thoughts in one moment. We'll continue this row straight after the break.
Gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. Was talking to you earlier about Keir Starmer's visit to the US and Vladimir Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and I'm asking how you respond to the last 48 hours. However, I'm in the middle of a row with Scarlett McGuire, who's former Labour advisor, and I wasn't fair in terms of giving you a free run on this whole absence.
Yeah, free run.
So there's no free run, but it's the own goals that I don't understand, that until or unless Labour admit that they've made own goals. I mean, we're just about to talk about national insurance, which I just think is just the most stupid and daft policy.
No, well, just said that I think they should have done it the other way around, and I think that when Jeremy Hunt said I'm going to lower it by 3%. That they should have just...
National insurance is a nasty tax, and it's a nasty tax because it's a tax on work and workers, it's a tax on employment, and it's also income tax by stealth. If you're going to, because you're not putting that money into the things that it was first designed
James,
for. It's smoke and mirrors.
There isn't enough money at the moment to I mean, the point about the people of Britain is that they expect really good public services.
Correct.
And then they want very low taxes. And the problem about good public services is they take money.
We've got the highest taxation that we've had for 70 years, and it's now going up further. And I've got a real issue when people say, well, we need more money. Yes, but say, for example, if you had a drop in your income, and in recent months, I've had that. So what do I do first? What I do first is I look at my expenditure and I go, what's necessary, what's unnecessary? And all the unnecessary stuff goes. That has not been done. It wasn't done by the last government, who were profligate with our money, and it's certainly not being done by this one. They are profligate with our money, they are wasting it and hosing it, and then they're coming back to us and they're taking more money away before they're looking at themselves and saying, do we really need to spend this?
I absolutely disagree, and I think
how can you disagree? It's fact.
And it's not a fact at all. It's your opinion, right? Your opinion, and you think you're always right.
Yes.
But you're not. And what I do think is, what I know is that every government department has been told to cut.
Good.
Right? That's what's going to happen. So when you say they're not doing it, they are doing it. And we know there are cuts all the time. We know that they're not spending what they actually need to spend. And you talk about something like the social security, right? Well, the problem is that what do you do? Do you cut social security so that people who can barely live?
But Rachel Reeves, by her policies, and either she's economically illiterate, or alternatively, she was steadfast making choices that were ideologically driven. Because anybody who makes a choice that means that within the markets interest rates are higher for longer, that the cost of debt rises. It means that if you make the wrong choices as a government and your financial position is considered less stable in the markets, you end up paying more for debt, which means that you raise the money through tax, you make it more difficult to hire people, and then more of your money is then paid off in interest and payments than it is on the services that you say that you're trying to raise that money to spend. And that's what she's done. No. She's increased our debt and the cost of debt significantly.
The thing about budgets is that you never quite know what's going to happen until about 3 months later. You can do all the predictions, and lots of people go, oh, that was a great budget, and it falls apart within a week. Is that what we have to do is we have to see how it works, right? She thinks she's right. I don't know. I don't know whether...
Can I give you 2 examples where I think this is going to be a real problem?
Right.
So, I'm a trustee of a national charity. That national charity is going to have to find, as a result of increases in national minimum wage, which I actually support, but also in national insurance, it's going to have to find an extra £750,000. I also chair a sports club, which is a CASC, a community amateur sporting club, so it's non-for-profit. We're going to have to find an extra £30,000. If anybody thinks that it's easy to find money under the sofa to pay the staff that we have, or to make the decisions that we do, this is a wrong-headed decision that is going to affect charities up and down the country, care providers up and down the country. She didn't think this through.
I've already said that I think she should have done the opposite, and I think she should have said that Jeremy Hunt's 3% lower on national insurance was unfunded, which it was, and that we couldn't afford it, and that actually she should just have reinstated it, because by that time nobody'd gained from it, so it was fine. So everybody's left as a neutral, and you don't do that. And I think that's the problem. Is there are other ways of doing it. I do think it's a shame about about employers. I mean, particularly about charities. But I mean, frankly, it's the same for pubs. I mean, it's the same for all where they depend.
The hospitality sector is really struggling, and I have to say, it's quite interesting that the only thing that you've supported is something which I think is a nasty green-eyed policy, which is VAT on school fees. You'd say, well, you would say that you went to a fee-paying school, which I always happy to admit. I think it's nasty.
No, so
I think it's a nasty policy, but that's the only thing you supported. Everything else that I've picked up, you said, well, actually, they could have done it in a different way. This is why they're behind the polls.
No, it's not actually. And as far as private schools, they're a business. They're a business, and businesses pay VAT.
Oh, it's a complete and utter disaster. Anyway, if I was in charge, I'd fire him. Anyway, we're going to have more rows after the very latest, and also we're going to be speaking to the Ukrainian MP, Kira Rudik. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 7 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 1st of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show on Talk, where we're on DAB+, on your smart speaker, we're on YouTube or your connected device, live from the news building here in London with me, James Max, sitting in for an ill Dr. David Bull. We send him our very best wishes for a very swift return to health. Meanwhile, I'm going to be with you not only today until 10 o'clock, but also tomorrow. Oh, double dosage of the Max. You couldn't wish for any more. Meanwhile, I dare say the rowing will continue, not in the Oval Office, in this studio. Former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, she's still here. I'm amazed that she stayed, frankly, because I think she was getting very cross with me. However, we'll continue with the discussion of the big stories of the day and going through the front pages, as well as finding out what do you do when quite a good friend of yours happens to be splashed all over the papers. We'll also be talking about beavers. They're in the news. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also be finding out about the minister who quit over aid and turning our attention to this question. Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America seemed to go pretty well. But then we've had Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. So how do you respond to the last 48 hours? The telephone number is 0344 499 1000. Plus, we'll be getting not only your calls and your thoughts on that, but digging into the rather extraordinary story about the number of people who dislike dunking biscuits in their tea. Anyway, if you want to join the conversation at any time, it's 0344 499 1000. Also this morning, you might like to know, what with it being the 1st of March, get out your daffs because it's St David's Day. Yes, today Wales celebrates its patron saint. A parade will take place in Cardiff to celebrate and remember Dewi Sant, the son of a nun who could perform miracles.
It's good to touch the green, green grass of home.
I'm coming out in hives. Talking of Wales, it's National Welsh Corgi Day. Yes. Adored by late Queen Elizabeth II, she's known to have more than 30 of the short-legged dogs over her years. Corgi means dwarf dog in Welsh. And if I can find it, there is a story in the papers, a royal dog story. I don't know, it might be in the Mail. It's the sort of thing they'd do. I don't know. I saw it. I don't know. I saw a story in there, and I meant to mark it up because I was just so fascinated by it. No, can't find it. Nobody cares. And then also, talking of animals, it's not the beaver story on the front page of one of the papers. We might come to that. It's nice. No, it's World Pig Day, in honour of the smart but often misunderstood swine. Pigs can be domesticated. Legend has it that one in 1772, so it must be true, was able to tell the time, count, and make some tricks on command. He was called Learned Pig. I mean, Learned Pig. I mean, couldn't they be a bit more? Couldn't they be a bit more thoughtful about the name? I mean, at least Marks and Spencer, when they named, other supermarkets are available, but when they named Percy, Percy Pigs, they did it with. Oh, producer Dave's troughing his way through a bag. How many bags is that you've eaten this morning? Is that your third one? Oh, God. 7! Is that how many? My God, I've never seen such troughing. And as for the biscuits that get eaten behind there, so we will be discussing dunking a little bit later on. It's quite extraordinary. However, to the more serious stories, and we have been discussing with Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, those front pages. And just before we get to our first guest in discussion, Scarlett, I mean, just picking up on those papers, I know I make light of some of the other stories in the papers. I mean, what happened in the Oval Office, regardless of your views on Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, a shouting match in the Oval Office is not edifying in any shape or form. No.
I mean, it's absolutely terrible. It should, if they were going to do it, they should have done it privately. They brought in Zelensky and humiliated him. I mean, it was just awful.
Was Keir Starmer a bit too crawly licky when he went in there?
I mean, I think, look, Keir Starmer was representing Britain. He wanted various deals. He didn't get them all. I mean, we always knew that the big thing that actually everybody wanted was to get America back involved with Ukraine, which has obviously completely gone now. And we knew it was going to be very, very difficult, but at least he tried.
Because after that, I mean, we thought that Macron did a good job, and there were hugs and smiles, and
absolutely.
We thought that swinging their way around, and we thought that Keir Starmer might have also considered that. And then you had this meeting, we were expecting, maybe some harsh words or some difficult reality and truth saying, look, you can't have everything but this just turned into a kind of sort of very personal, and as you say, I guess the difficulty that we have is normally in international politics when people disagree, you don't have it sort of personal. You don't have people losing their temper. You don't have sort of crass language used in a sort of angry, almost childlike way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what is interesting in the Daily Mail, Patrick Bishop said it was like a mafia hit, right? That you had with J.D. Vance being the enforcer and absolutely going for him. It was just, and you wonder how much was planned. I mean, you wonder how that actually.
I wonder, and as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, and if you just joined us, then thank you. And it's not Dr. David Bull, it's me, James Manx, with you till 10. As you and I were discussing earlier, I wonder whether Donald Trump knew that he wasn't going to get what he wanted. If he let Zelensky do this great thing, which normally gets, rousing applause and response, and people, respect his, the fact that he stood up for his party, his country, and, survived this war, if you like, against all odds for 3 years, yes, with huge help from elsewhere, and normally has a very respectful position, which gives him the upper hand. And what Trump wanted to do is say, no, I'm the upper hand here. If you're not going to play ball with that, I have to be seen as the upper hand. So therefore, I'm just going to go in, break stuff in order to allow me to build it in the way. In the same way that he made some interesting comments when he talked about Gaza, basically saying it is a demolition site. Somebody's got to fix it. Nobody was prepared to move. So what he's done in there, he's gone in there with the most outrageous suggestion that he's never going to do. He's never going to turn it into the American Riviera. He had no intention of doing that. But what he did have the intention of doing was saying, I really don't want to do this, but I'm going to say I'm going to do it so that you move your position, so that you decide that you're going to do it, and then I can go, OK, all right, so fine, mate, it's not as good as if I was going to do it, but you do it. And that's what he's doing here, is that he's saying to Zelensky, you say that it has to go back to the original borders. That is not going to get you a deal. I'm going to just break it until you realise that you've got to move.
Zelensky never said that. I mean, that never came up. And actually, and remember, what Zelensky was supposed to be signing was not a peace deal. It was giving over all the rare minerals in Ukraine to the Americans.
Which kind of opens up that whole conversation again, because if it's not going to America, China would like it, Russia would like it, maybe the EU would like it. Anyway, let's get the views now of Kira Rudik, who is a Ukrainian MP and Golos party leader. Kira, good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Talk. We're, aghast at what we saw in the Oval Office. How are you and Ukrainians responding to what you saw between your leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, and Donald Trump? Well, good morning to you.
Good morning, James, and thank you so much for having me. Over the last 2 weeks, I have received so many calls from our fighters at the front line who were asking what were all those Donald Trump statements about. They will be asking, why would Donald Trump say that we started the war and that Zelensky is a dictator, etc. And I was telling that this is just a negotiation technique. Well, yesterday, I think it became obvious what was our president against. And he came to the White House with the intention to sign off Ukrainians' rare minerals, the framework deal, for exchange for the security guarantees. From what we heard from back and forth, the security guarantees that President Trump was trying to persuade President Zelensky of was that he trusts Putin and that Putin is afraid of Trump and that he would not attack us. Excuse me, but this is not the security guarantees that Ukrainian people can accept, because we have been in many so-called ceasefire deals. It never worked, and we had paid an ultimate price for somebody else's illusions. So President Zelensky was representing Ukrainian people. And I can tell you, James, right now, there are so many people here having his back. And I really hope that when he was under this pressure in the Oval Office, standing up to the bullies, that he felt that his country is behind him and we all are behind him.
Okay, so let's ask then.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but
sure,
but we have to do that.
Sure, but let's ask, because the reality is, for all Europe's great intention, money and support, and significant support it is, billions of pounds of support in militia, in defences and various other things. Without America's support, this becomes a futile attempt to continue a war, doesn't it? So somehow Volodymyr Zelensky has to get Donald Trump and the American people or the American government behind him. How does he do that after this? Is there any way back?
We don't know. The truth is, we don't know. I think when the heat is over, there will be like attempts of reconciliation. But the fact is, if President Trump thinks that he can throw Ukraine into Putin's hands, or he can pressure us to the peace deal that is not good for us, then we will just continue fighting. I will remind you that in 2022, at the beginning, we have no one holding our back, and we still decided to fight. And right now, we are not changing our goal.
So but the resilience is strong in Ukraine. We've seen Donald Trump do this before, because if you remember, he made some very rude, sarcastic and other comments about Kim Jong-un. He then went to meet because they kind of found a way to meet, and then they did meet, and then, of course, things went wrong again. But this is Trump's way, isn't it? That if he believes that he doesn't have the upper hand, at least at the beginning, he breaks it all up. It's a classic deal tactic to disrupt absolutely everything, throw your toys out the pram, get people to move, get people to come back. And then when they come back, it's all smiles or otherwise. I mean, for example, when Donald Trump was asked the other day, well, you called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator. And he just went, oh, did I? I mean, can you trust anything the man says?
Yeah, I think we may very well see in a week the question, oh, did Zelensky even visit Oval Office? I don't recall that. But it's like we are laughing about that, but I think situation right now is really tough. We know that this is Donald Trump's way of doing things. And again, given that, I'm glad that President acted the way he did, that he didn't step down, that he was not silent, listening to the accusations and offense to Ukrainian people who are paying the ultimate price. And we will move forward from that. I think right now is the best time to again ask Europe if everyone is ready finally to confiscate Russian money. It's 300 billion, James. They have been sitting in Belgium Euroclear Fund. So right now, when the responsibility on the Europe security is on Europe's shoulders, I think the best and the most fair way to move forward is, again, to consider things that were not considered before. So to make Russia pay for the war and for what they have committed. How
much of a compromise do you think Ukrainian people are prepared to make in order to end the war?
James, we were never even offered some realistic deal that the baseline would be the security guarantees. Then we can discuss any kind of the compromise. The question is, what is the baseline? And we have not seen or heard or understood the baseline. From what we have witnessed yesterday was that the security guarantees that we are offered is Donald Trump's opinion. And I'm sorry, it wouldn't work for us, especially when we are talking about Putin. So we are ready to talk about some compromises when we know of how do we make this deal work, of what is the way that we will make Russia to stop attacking us. And I can tell you, the fact is, since Donald Trump started trying to resolve the issue with Russia, we have not seen a single fact proving that Putin really wants peace. We have been attacked every single night. Situation at the front line didn't change. And yesterday was the first time this year when we had energy outages, because Russia keeps attacking us. They don't care what Donald Trump says.
So just finally to you, in terms of what happens next, do you think that we see a return of Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House? Should he try again? Or do you think that he should simply walk away and turn his attention to Europe, where Keir Starmer has been very clear, the President of the European Union has been very clear, the President of France, the incoming leader of Germany, and maybe he should turn his attention to that. What do Ukrainian people think he should do? Should he try again with America?
I think the most important meeting that is going to happen is tomorrow's meeting with the leaders of European countries. And I think President needs to do his best there, and we have high hopes. Look, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were very blunt, saying that Europe has to take its own responsibility for its security. And this is what we all should take as truth and start working on that. We will try to reconvene with Donald Trump, because the goal of our country is not to have President Zelensky and President Trump to be friends, right? The goal for us is to end the war and make sure that Russia would not attack us again. And I'm sorry, but we didn't hear anything that would bring us closer to that during the last night's back and forth.
Well, Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP, Golos party leader, thank you so much for joining us here on Talk and explaining your side of things and indeed giving us your interpretation of the most extraordinary 24, perhaps 48 hours in international politics that we've probably ever seen. We will turn our attention back to your calls on your response to the last 48 hours, 0344 499 1000 if you want to give me a call. If you've never called a radio station before, if you've got a view on not only the last 24, 48 hours, but also looking ahead to the next 24 hours. What on earth should Keir Starmer, indeed the European leaders, do in response to what happened in the Oval Office? Do you think that we need to provide more support for Ukraine? Is our support for Ukraine solid, and should it be? Or do you think that we should be talking once again to the Americans and trying to get them back on side? 0344 499 1000 on that. Plus, we'll be getting some views once again from Scarlett Maguire. We'll be going through those papers. And dare I suggest, I will promise to get to this story, which happens to discuss one of my mates. So it's extraordinary. Anyway, all of that is coming up next on Talk.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:23 is time. Very good morning. It's Saturday the 1st of March. It's me, James Manx, with you till 10. Talking about Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and then, of course, Vladimir Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. How do you respond to the last 48 hours is what I'm asking. 0344 499 1000. Pat says, what a most unedifying spectacle yesterday's debacle in the Oval Office was. It was Trump and Vance who were disrespectful parties, bullying an invited guest, 2-on-1 like unpleasant children in a school playground. President Zelensky is the elected and respected leader of a very large country and should be treated as such. Shame on you, President Trump, says Pat. Meanwhile, Mick in Wallington says last week has exposed the BBC as politically biased, Starmer and Lammy as total hypocrites, and Putin has big dirt on Trump, says Mick in Wallington. Blimey. Well, we might get to that BBC story very shortly. As I'm going through some of those stories with Scarlett Maguire, we'll come back to that shortly. Tom in Telford says, good morning, James. It's great to hear your voice again. You have been missed. Well, Tom, that's very kind. Thank you. Sharon also echoes that. Says, it's lovely to see you this morning. My response, though, to the last 48 hours, that I'm so glad that Trump put that Zelensky in his place. Who the hell does he think he is, that he goes to the Oval Office and demand? Doesn't even say thank you. The UK are idiots. They're accommodating this awful man Zelensky, and I hope Trump does not give Ukraine any more money, says Sharon in Staffordshire. Meanwhile, Dean in Dagenham says that shouldn't have happened, but we can't keep throwing cash at Ukraine. Trump is correct. We should look at to the US as our ally. Where has all the money gone in Ukraine? It's not just going to fighting the effort, he says. Nice to have you back, says Brian. Thanks, Brian. I never went anywhere. I just wasn't necessarily with you on air. But it's all right. I'm here now. It's fine. I'm with you tomorrow as well. I know. I can sense your excitement. Tony says, people who support the war should sign up for the Ukrainian International Legion. You too could become worm food for the Ukrainian trench. Sean says, good morning. Good to see you back. Perhaps it's just me or being cynical. But wherever that Mirin Starmer goes, strife follows. He visits Germany and the Chancellor goes. Now he visits Trump and the next day Zelensky gets in the ear bashing from Trump and many other times. He has had the complete opposite of the Midas touch and is a downright jinx, says Sean. Meanwhile, Ian in the City of Culture says Zelensky was sucker punched by 3 idiots. The reported over a suit comment, Vance getting his mouth in, and suddenly the mouth of the South. Whatever that all means. No idea. Roger in Dorset says, good morning, James. Over the last few weeks, Donald Trump has had everybody scampering around like headless chickens. It needed to be done. People are more upset by his rhetoric and antics than they are about the hundreds of thousands of people being killed on both sides in Ukraine. Peace must be the one and only thing on everybody's agenda, says Roger in Dorset. And what else have we got here? Barry says, good morning, James. The American money tree is drying up. Trump and Vance are tired of Ukraine and Europe taking advantage of their country. These 2 patriots are defending their country and saying enough is enough, says Barry. Meanwhile, Mick says, Scarlett accuses J.D. Vance of having ideology. That's rich, as she's been pushing a Marxist far-left ideology for years. Oh, dear. Scarlett, welcome back.
Yes, I think to call my ideology far-left Marxist is quite something.
Even I wouldn't say that. I mean, it is an ideology that I can't subscribe to. But having said that, let me just get your thoughts, though. Fascinating insight. From somebody who genuinely is, on the front line, as it were. Ukrainian MP giving us her thoughts on that. I mean, how on earth do you respond to what our previous guest said?
Well, I think what's really interesting is that what Ukraine really wants is a security guarantees. So she didn't say, the peace deal is completely, we're not going to give up any land. What she said is we cannot have peace without security guarantees.
And that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because what she's really saying is that ultimately, whether it's a demilitarised zone, whether it's international troops on the ground, it's the enforcement of a border that means that Russia and their threat goes away, as opposed to relying on Russia not going back in for second dibs.
Yes, because they absolutely do not trust Putin, and neither does Europe. And that's what Keir Starmer and President Macron were trying to get out of Trump, was security guarantees. And his view is if I say no, then Putin won't do it.
Okay, fine, but I understand that. But then what about the other things which Russia would say are red rags to a bull? One of them is Ukraine joining the EU, and the other is Ukraine potentially joining NATO. Now, one I can see as more troubling than the other, in the sense that if Ukraine wants to join the EU, well, that should be up to them and their people. NATO, more problematic, perhaps, because of the international side. What's your take on it?
I mean, I actually think that Ukraine is willing to do an awful lot of compromise, because all they talk about is security guarantees. They want it to stop. And as they said, you know, that Trump talks about the peace deal. Trump talks about having met with the Russians. And then, as she said, we've been attacked every night since then. And what we have to remember is what it's like being in Ukraine. As you said, the front line. I mean, the front line, even if, you know, you've got a perfectly ordinary job in Kyiv, that you're having these problems. I mean, they do. Russia is the enemy. Russia has come in.
Well, you talk about Russia as the enemy, and I think it's kind of interesting because I was watching the Katya Adler documentary that she made about the Balkan states, and I think there is a huge lack of understanding, both culturally and otherwise, that we assumed that these states that then, you know, were born out of multiple countries, that they were all West-leaning, that they all had this view about I suppose, our Western way of life and values and various other things. What's very clear is that that's not the case. And there are significant numbers of people within these countries who have some quite divergent views. I wouldn't necessarily agree with them, but I think we assume that everybody's kind of on the West view that, you know, democracy is what we want, that this is, you know, how we want to live our lives. And in fact, what we're dealing with is some very divided countries and difficult and historic past. And until or unless we get a better understanding of these nations, we keep fighting for these things, saying that this is what they want. Some of them want it, absolutely. Some of them don't, and this is part of the issue. Not everybody. There isn't groupthink there.
No. So what the groupthink in Ukraine is, we don't trust the Russians, and frankly, Putin thinks that Ukraine should be Russia, and that's it. As far as the Balkans, I mean, you're absolutely right. You've got Serbia, who is totally pro-Russian, not just small groups of them. You've got Kosovo that is also totally pro-American.
And you have the other thing that nobody really wants to talk about, which is different religious background leading to particular views and where their sort of influence and axis lies. And one has to talk about, you know, the Christian background, but then the sort of purist Christian background, which is very different and sort of more hardline and more perhaps East-leaning. And then, of course, you have the Muslim influence and religious belief that gives a very different stance. Yeah, well, and when you mix all those things together, it becomes extremely difficult and toxic and complicated.
I think that Kosovo is about as Muslim as Britain is Christian. It's very. It was called. I mean, a friend of mine referred to it as Muslim. I mean, I've done a lot of work in Kosovo. You go go there, and people are drinking, people are having a good time, and they actually, and it's also very multicultural. That there are a lot of Catholics. There are Catholics. There are Jews. There are I'm not sure how many Anglicans, Catholics, Jews, and Muslims, and nobody. I mean, they all get on incredibly well. So I think
sometimes.
Within Kosovo, that's fine. Actually, there are no religious problems. The difference is the Serbs and the Albanians.
That's very true. Now, we must turn our attention back to your calls. And I did say the number before. It's 0344 499 1000 if you want to join that conversation. Ian is in London. Ian, good morning.
Good morning, Max. Good morning, Scarlett.
You can call me James.
Oh, just sorry. That's
James. All right, Ian. I mean, you know, let's. Oh, hang on a second. I'm about to do a Trump. I mean, you know, come in to. Oh my God, unbelievable. Anyway, Ian, what would you? That's quite right. What would you like to say?
It's very funny. You've had two sort of discussions this morning between you and Scarlett. One about the Trump and the whole incident yesterday, which was, I couldn't believe what I was watching, like nobody else. And also with the business with Starmer and everything else and Labour. This seems to me a little bit like Scarlett's mentioned it before, the manifesto, Labour's manifesto, when they came into before they came into power. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. The next thing is Rachel, as you said, James, suddenly has got this black hole, right? Because you can't, as you say, you can't go out and go into a club and say, I'm going to spend all money on drinks, and then find out there are no drinks inside the bar. And this is what they're saying. We're going to do, but they cut off the winter fuel payments, but they were still able to find money for the doctors, still find money for everybody else. Well, wait a minute. And as Scarlett said, the poor people can't insulate their homes. Well, wait a minute. If you can't do that, and the poor people can't pay it because you've taken away their winter payments, you're causing more problems.
You see, I tend to agree with you, Ian, because I think one of these things here is that if a politician says to me, oh, there's no money, rather like when they left that letter, there's no money left. There is money. The country has an enormous amount of assets, and it also has asset allocation. Every year it receives its income. You just have to decide how you're going to spend that income and whether you're going to spend it more wisely. And if you say to me that the education system is in crisis, which I think in many places it probably is, we've got buildings which have got racked concrete, we've got issues that need dealing with, and the number one thing, if a politician said to me, and I don't care which side of the political spectrum they came from, if they said our number one goal is to reduce class sizes, and that we see as to one of the routes that we can achieve better education for our children, because 30 children in a class is never ever going to achieve the same as the fee-paying schools, which might be 18 or 20. It makes a huge difference. But the first thing they spend their money on is breakfast clubs. It's just like, well, where is the very first responsibility of a parent? The first responsibility of a parent should be to feed your children. And if for whatever reason you cannot do that, I absolutely agree. There must be a way to ensure that provision is there for a child. But just basically spray money at something saying, well, everybody needs to have free breakfast, it's just a nonsense. Scarlett is actually beside herself now.
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, hang on, Ian. Let me bring Scarlett in, and
you always go off the thing about breakfast clubs, right? Is they're really, really important. Is they're not compulsory. You don't have to go, but for a lot of parents, dropping a child off at 9 o'clock. It means that they can't go to work, which is particularly mothers, right? So you drop your child off much earlier and they get fed. And it is absolutely known that if you have a decent meal inside you, you're going to learn better. And it gets children to school on time. Breakfast clubs are a win-win-win, right? They're really good for the country. They're really good for the children, and it means actually that parents can go to work instead of dropping a child off with the childminder and then getting it. I
never had that.
I know you've never had that because they're new. Right?
They're just daft.
No, they're not daft. They're not daft. They work really, really well. Parents really want them.
Then they should pay for them if they want them. I mean, I find it absolutely astonishing that the first thing that they do when we've got an education system, I genuinely think I get the message, and I get the idea that you want parents to go to work and you want them to be dropped off into school, and I understand.
And you have after school clubs. After school clubs, have tea and things, but should they be? They shouldn't be.
And I think after school clubs, but but
they're both for the same reason. It's actually so that parents can work, and it's so that children get treated better. But the wonderful thing about breakfast clubs is they get the children to school on time. They get the children there. They are fantastic, right? They're very, very popular with parents and
teachers.
They are. And they really help.
So free money.
And they really help education, right? That's what matters. We want what Bridget Phillipson, who is the Secretary of State for Education, wants is she wants every child to have education as a way of making their lives better. That education is a real opportunity, and that's what she is determined to do.
The first thing she did was stick in breakfast clubs, and the second thing she did was put VAT on school fees for private schools, which is an ideological decision. It just demonstrates that she is driven by ideology and hasn't got a clue. She hasn't got a clue.
It's absolute rubbish. And Bridget Phillips, no, you are talking absolute rubbish. Bridget Phillipson is somebody whose life was changed. So she was a poor child of a single parent. She went to a comprehensive school. They picked her up. She worked incredibly hard. She got to Oxford and then she went back.
Good.
Right? So she knows how education can change people's lives, and that's what she wants.
And
that's what she wants, the opportunity for every child.
And if she knows, then it disappoints me that those are the first choices that she made. Ian, back to you. What would you like to say? I've just had another row. I mean, frankly, if I walked out the studio now, Scarlett would just row on her own. I mean, she could row with herself. It's just unbelievable. I've never heard such nonsense come out of anybody's mouth, which is like, it was in the manifesto, so we must do it. And yet all the stupid things that they've done, which you agree they're stupid, they weren't in the manifesto. We were never told about national... We are governed by cretins.
I said it's in the manifesto, so the arguments had been had that actually everybody knew if Labour got in that they were going to put VAT on private schools. It wasn't a secret. It had been argued out. And what's really interesting is, among all the things, is how often it gets brought up.
Yes.
In the newspapers and on television, because all of you have either had private education or send your children
Politics
privately.
of envy. There you see
it.
In clear view.
No, James.
Politics of envy. Anyway, let's get into it.
It's absolutely not politics of envy. What I'm saying...
Oh, no, sorry. No, it's not. It's absolutely not.
What I'm saying is the reason...
Because it really is going to make a difference.
Is the millions are making a difference. They are making a difference, right?
No, because of the extra pressures. If you can't see that, you don't understand basic economics. Ian, back to you.
Right.
I'll shut up.
I'll tell you something. Scarlett. Right, I'll tell you something. Please don't ever meet me because we'll be going rowing. Right. Can I ask you a question? Do you feel, this to Scarlett, do you feel that when Macron left the White House, when Starmer left the White House, they didn't phone Zelensky and say, don't worry, we've laid the groundwork, you're going to be okay? Do you think that they didn't phone him and tell him, you're going to be okay?
I have no idea, but presumably Zelensky, like the rest of us, saw the reports and thought it might work. It might work, but even then he knew, and Trump made no secret of it in the press conferences after Macron and after Starmer, that his idea of security guarantees was saying to Putin, you won't do that, will you? And that's the real problem with Ukraine is they don't trust the Russians, and there's nothing the Russians have done to get that trust.
No, but the thing is, I feel Zelensky walked in there. He caused a few of the problems for himself, but a lot of it was that he was led by Starmer, because Starmer's been doing this with the manifesto, and it goes back to it. Oh, we're not going to sort of do anything to winter payments. We're not going to drop going after getting more money for the women's pensions. But all these things, as you say, it was in the manifesto. We were going to sort of like do the VAT. But it was also in the manifesto. There was nothing in the manifesto that they weren't going to try and help the women with their pensions. Was there anything in that? No, but there were plenty of speeches they said they would help on it. Is that right or wrong? James, help me.
Well, I would take the view that, it's very convenient. It's very convenient looking at manifestos and pointing to it, say, well, the discussion has had, so we must do it. But then, of course, you have the other argument that Labour have come out with, which, well, we didn't really know what we found, and so we've changed our minds. So politicians can change their minds on pretty much on the sixpence. And I would just say, if something is not going to produce the results that you say it's going to, basic maths will tell you. And I guarantee, and this is a discussion, Scarlett, you'll be invited back if I'm allowed on air in a few years' time, when we see how much some of those moves cost and whether it really made a difference to the bottom line and provided the educational support or otherwise, fine. I might concur with you. But having said that, I don't think that's going to be the case.
I want to say one thing, is I really think you cannot blame Keir Starmer for what happened in the Oval Office yesterday.
Don't worry,
really
James.
Was not his fault. He did his best.
I have to say, this is probably an occasion I might agree with you.
James,
which is a rare thing.
Just before I go...
Yes, Ian.
Before I go, don't worry. Hold on. I got a letter here from the King. You can come back. Don't worry, I've got a letter here from the King. He said you can come back. But Scarlett, I don't know if you're going to get a room at the Travel Inn at Windsor.
Oh, wow. OK. All right, Ian, thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll have more rows with Scarlett. And, if you want a row, the minister who quit over aid cuts. We'll discuss that next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:44 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you until 10 this morning with your weekend breakfast show this Saturday morning. And with me in the studio is Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor. A story for you, if I can get your take on it. The International Development Minister, that's Annalisa Dodds, she's resigned over the Prime Minister's cuts to the aid budget. Was she right to resign?
I think she had to. I think if you're in charge of the aid budget, if you're international development, and it's been cut so much that, frankly, almost all the money in it is going to go on asylum seekers and Ukrainian refugees, so that nothing, almost nothing, is going to go outside, that actually, I think you've got to make a stand. I said on Wednesday that I couldn't see she had any choice but to go.
OK, so she had to go. Did Keir Starmer make the right choice to redirect that money?
Well, it was the easiest choice, wasn't it? Because the people who are going to be affected are not going to be in Britain. And quite rightly, after the USAID cuts, slashing, there's hardly anything left, that actually international aid is really affected. And
but then when you hear what some of that international aid is spent on, some of it, of course, is spent on very worthy, genuinely feeding people who are starving, genuinely providing education. But when you have a look at some of the things, and you might say, well, it's just the right-wing press digging it out, there are so many examples which almost defy comprehension in terms of why money is being spent in this direction. Is there any wonder that people in Britain of many political persuasions are deeply unconvinced that this is what we should be spending our money on?
I think it's really important that actually we do. You talk about soft power, right? That if we don't, so in terms of what it means to Britain, is that actually all that money and money spent on the British Council, which has been cut massively, it meant that we were a real force in the countries, right, and that they look to us, and it was very, very good. Let alone the fact that, you know, we do massive work on vaccines, we do lots and lots of health, we do empowering girls, which does make a whole difference, because the problem with aid is the women get it, and it just means they do even more work.
It is, but then there are a lot of people who are also concerned that the deal that Keir Starmer wants to sign off, and I don't care whether the previous government were negotiating it, because they never should have done, on the Chagos Islands, is absolutely astonishing. The amount of money that he's going to hoof out the door, and it looks as if the increase in spending might very well be done to pay off that particular dirty deal.
Well, I think actually it's going to be on defence. I mean, what's interesting about Chagos is that Trump agreed to it as well. Is that we did have a problem. I mean, we did behave appallingly with the Chagos Islanders. Is we said, right, you might think you live here, but you don't, and we got rid of them all.
But we didn't discuss it with them. We've just done this dirty deal with another country. We're handing over billions of our pounds. There hasn't really been much public discussion or explanations to what we're doing. And as you say, the very people who we turfed out of that nation, we haven't even given two fakes of a thought to them.
Yeah, we should
So
have
in fact, we're handing
them.
over our money. We're doing a dirty deal, and we should have thought about it better. It's disappointing.
What we did was we concluded a deal that was already there, and that actually we got finished. And what we did was we did the compromise between giving the Chagos Islanders back their islands, apart from Diego Garcia, where the Americans will go on having their military base in the South Pacific.
What's the BBC right to withdraw off the BBC iPlayer the documentary How to Survive a War Zone?
I think it's very difficult. I haven't seen it, because by the time all the publicity happened, it had gone. I mean, I think that I mean, what it was it was trying to talk about what it was like in Gaza. Unfortunately, and I don't know all the facts, because nobody does, because we haven't seen the thing, but it appears that the independent television company got a child whose father was a deputy minister of agriculture.
I mean, this is absolutely astonishing, and to somebody from the Jewish community, as I am appalled, horrified and disgusted that such a documentary can be done, not because I don't think that we should be looking into the horrific situation of Palestinian people and the suffering and all that sort of thing, and that side of the story shouldn't be told. But I do expect our national broadcaster to be fair and impartial. And if, for example, they had said, and any basic analysis should tell you who is taking part, where do they come from? That would be the first question I would be asking about any documentary, in the same way that if it was saying on the Israeli side, I would be saying that. And I think that there are some big failures here. Anyway, we're going to come back and discuss this some more in just a few moments here on Talk. And also, if you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so. It's 0344 499 1000.
So does Putin want to stop this war or does he not? Because if he doesn't want to stop this war, then putting our nose up his backside, which is effectively what all this stuff has been that Trump has been doing, is not going to change anything. If he wants to stop this war, then we don't need to be doing all. I mean, this is then a simple negotiation of interests. What are his interests? What are our interests? What are Ukraine's interests? And let's go to the negotiating table.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh my God, she's roaring at me. I've got my ears in and I can't hear a word. Scarlett Maguire, what are you going on about? What are you cross about now?
Honestly, I think...
What have I said now?
You talked about two-tier policing, right?
Oh,
and
two-tier Keir is unbelievable.
No. And I'm just saying that Just Stop Oil, whether you agree with them or whether you don't, right, is they have been jailed for peaceful protests.
Excellent. Get rid.
No, absolutely.
Jail the lot of them.
No,
sorry, jail the lot of them. And can we stop having the most...
Somebody has been jailed for 5 years.
Excellent.
Oh, come on.
Make it 10.
Come on. It's a
Just Stop Oil. I don't care.
Protest.
No, but they're breaking the law. And we have laws in there. What they're saying is, they're saying peaceful protest doesn't work, so we're going to take affirmative action. So if you take affirmative action, then you know what you're doing and you should take the consequences of it. In the same way that I think that there are people who are, and going back to this discussion about this BBC documentary, I think there are real issues and problems with the way that the police and indeed the government have responded to some of the protests on our streets, where there is some extremely offensive material out there. And I understand, by the way, the sensitivities of the whole discussion about Gaza and the Palestinians and the suffering and all of these things. And for example, as a British Jew, I have never been to Israel. I certainly don't agree with everything that the Israeli government says, and I have a lot of things to say about a lot of it, and I think most people do. But what I find is that the fact that we have some of those protests on our streets, and if you could see how offensive some of the things which are on banners are, I'm sorry, in the same way that if you want people who are rioting on our streets to be dealt with severely, and so they should be, you've got to take action. And I'm afraid that the Mayor of London and various other people have just allowed these protests to take place on a regular basis, and it is deeply upsetting and deeply concerning for many, many people in this country.
No, I think it's really important that we allow peaceful protests, whether we agree with them or not.
Peaceful protests,
I do not agree with Tommy Robinson's lot, right? But I do think that they have a right. They have a right to protest on the streets, and I actually feel very strongly about is a former judge and former Supreme Judge of Supreme Judge of Northern Ireland, who is a Catholic, said it's very, very important that the Orange Marches, which are horrible, go ahead, right?
Sure.
It's very important to go ahead because actually it allows people to vent, and otherwise it's kept underneath you never know what's going on. I think it's really important, and that's why I believe in peaceful protest.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't have peaceful protests, but should there be any restriction on what people can or can't say? I mean, for example, people say that from the river to the sea, that's pretty offensive, which I think it is. But
the Israeli cabinet can say it. They believe that Israel should be from the river to the sea.
I understand.
Right? I think there is a problem here.
There is a problem with that. But say, for example, I don't know, death to all Jews. Should we be allowing people to have placards? But there are.
Right, well, I think they shouldn't be.
So
I absolutely think they should. Of course you shouldn't say.
And what about people when they got their flags with the parachutists and demonstrating?
Yeah, I think there are things that you shouldn't be allowed to do. And just as that I wouldn't believe a Tommy Robinson thing talking about death to all Muslims.
And when we talk, of course, and when we talk about two-tier policing, It's that on one hand the police have been very firm in some respects, and in others they're not, because they tend not to go in, or they don't want to inflame or whatever. And I understand the toxicity of these things, but I have to say I do applaud the BBC in investigating and certainly taking this thing down whilst they do it. What I am very concerned about is how the BBC have reported throughout the whole of this conflict, because they have given certain sides. You put pictures of children who are suffering because you have them. It is inevitably going to sway people's opinion. And of course, we don't have the images from what happened on October the 7th in the same way. And, you know, and I think some of their coverage has been pretty downright awful.
I think we do. I cannot get the images of the 7th of October out of my head. I have heard about it. I have seen them. I think they're absolutely terrible. But in the meantime, you know, coming up for 50,000 people have been killed in Gaza. At least 2/3 of them are women and children, so they are not members of Hamas. And I just think that we have to have both.
Now, one thing I haven't done is talk about the front page of The Sun. The Fight House, they say, Ukraine hero ambushed is the one story, but also on the other side is Love Split Fern and the TV boss. And I looked at this and I thought, oh, the Fern Cotton, yeah, whatever. And then suddenly I thought, I know that face, so I might explain why I know that face and why some of you may recognise that face as well. But also, I haven't had a chance to chat with Scarlett about, arguably, the most important story of the day. Starmy loves nice beavers is the front page of the Daily Star. Nice beavers will spread across the UK after Keir Starmer U-turn opened the doors to a big beaver boom, and this is to allow beavers to live wild, and we haven't had a chance to discuss that. So all I can say is thank you for rowing with me. Scarlett Maguire, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until the next time. So we will be turning our attention to getting your reaction for the last 48 hours. That's still to come. Plus, we will be going all the way to the United States of America to speak to Caroline Faraday. That's coming up next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 8 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 1st of March, and this is the Weekend Breakfast Show. On Talk, where we're on DAB+, on your smart speaker. We're on YouTube as well, if you want to watch it. Why not? And we're also on your connected device. We're live from the news building here in London. My name's James Max. I'm sitting in for Dr. David Bill, who's sadly ill. So it's going to be me today until 10 o'clock. And tomorrow, I can sense your excitement. Now, still going to be turning our attention to the paper, where I do have to talk about a story where, shall we just say that if a friend of yours is caught up in something, how do you respond? And I may very well be speaking to Caroline Faraday about not only the big stories from the United States of America, but how to deal with a bit of a celeb story. But also, we'll be turning our attention to, well, is there anything in the news other than Donald Trump? No. That's why I'm asking this morning, after Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America and Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, how do you respond to the last 48 hours? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Also, if you want to send me a text, 87222, start your text with the word talk. At talkTV is where you can find us on the socials. And if you want to send me a WhatsApp message, 0344 499 1000. And as I said on the socials, I may very well post something or other on either X or indeed Instagram. If you want to follow me on there, it's at the James Max, if you want to find us there. Plus, we'll be talking about some of the other stories and finding out how many people in the UK dislike dunking biscuits in their tea, if only as a distraction from arguably Armageddon and the possibility of a Third World War. 0344 499 1000 to join the conversation this morning here on Talk. So today is St David's Day. Wales celebrates its patron saint. A parade is going to be taking place in Cardiff to celebrate and remember Dewi Sant, the son of a... Who knows if I pronounced that correctly? Probably not. I'll probably get lots of correction. Anyway, the son of a nun who could perform miracles. Really? So the reason for playing that, apparently, is Stereophonics are a Welsh band, and that's all they could come up with. I mean, really? Is that the best we can do? OK, all right, well done you. Talking of Wales, it's National Welsh Corgi Day, and I still haven't found the dog story, which is in one of the papers somewhere. And it's about, I think it's about King Charles. He's got a new dog. But no, this is about the late Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, she had corgis. It's known that she had more than 30 of them during her life. Corgi means dwarf dog in Welsh.
How much is that dog in the window? The one with the waggly tail. How much is that? Right, have we finished with that?
Talking of animals, it's also World Pig Day. No, we're not talking beavers. They're on the front page of the Star. Starmy loves nice beavers, but no, it's not that story. No, it's this one. It's World Pig Day, and in honour of the smart but often misguided and misunderstood swine, pigs can be domesticated. Legend has it that in 1772, there was one that was able to tell the time, count, and make some tricks on command. I was going to make a hilarious comment about some of our politicians, but I won't. This one was called Learned Pig. Are you having a giraffe? All right, enough. Thank you so much. I mean, genuinely, I don't know what happens on this station when I'm not here. I mean, really? It's just unbelievable. Anyway, if you want to join the conversation, 0344 499 1000, and I promise I will get to your messages. I've been slightly inundated this morning, so I will come to as many of your messages and calls as I possibly can between now and 10 o'clock. Meanwhile, let us turn our attention to Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
I mean, is that even some kind of real accent? Caroline... apparently I'm supposed to go yeehaw.
Mine?
Absolutely
Mine or yours or the one on the jingle?
No, look, Your accent is wonderful. The dulcet tones of Caroline Faraday. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, look, wonderful stuff. If I was you, I would be sending a little message to my friend David, or indeed the production team, going, you know what? We've been doing this for a while now. Surely a little bit more production could be done for that. And also somebody who can actually use... that's not a genuine American accent. I mean, they'd have you laughed out of court. We'd have a row in the Oval Office over it.
Well, have you ever heard an American try to do a British accent? It's very troublesome.
Yeah, but when you're Renée Zellweger, was he Canadian? I don't know.
Actually, yes, but not everybody is Renée Zellweger, let's be fair.
That's true.
Most of them are not. Most of them are Dick Van Dyke.
Even if they're female. That's very true. It is extraordinary. I spent a lot of time working in the States. I lived in LA on off for 2.5, 3 years. And I was amazed by the differences in language and culture and approach. And of course, we're understood. And, you know, I think Americans tend to look at the British accent and be rather charmed by it. And the Brits listen to an American accent are horrified by it. It's like somebody getting their nails and scratching it down a blackboard. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I used to do a joke when I still used to do quite a bit of stand-up, and like, because the first time that you speak, you know, and you're there, you know, obviously they're clocking, what's that accent, trying to figure out where you're from. And I used to just always say, it's English, it's what your language is loosely based on. And that sort of sums it up, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Meanwhile, it seems as if certainly English or British manners were completely lost and forgotten in the Oval Office. For whatever Donald Trump might be trying to achieve, and I sort of get it, we've seen it before, that if he feels that somebody isn't coming in with the right attitude, he kind of behaves like a small child. He throws everything out. There's a massive tantrum on the basis that then forces them to move, and then he kind of forgets that, you know, the abuse ever happened when they come back again. Am I giving him too much credit to say, I think this was kind of deliberate to get Zelensky to move? Or is it simply that Donald Trump hasn't got it when it comes to international relations and politics?
I think it's one or the other of those things, yes. But if you look at the history of Donald Trump as a negotiator, you know, his background in real estate in New York, that is a very different kind of transactional win or lose kind of scenario. And when it comes to international relations, to sit down and chat with Zelensky, essentially they should be talking from the same side as opposed to, you know, winning or losing against each other and coming to an arrangement. And that seems to be a skill set that is more challenging for Donald Trump. He's a very transactional negotiator. And I think there is a tendency, James, and we talked about it last week, there's a sort of tendency to try and contextualize or put your own logic on the things that, oh, well, he's doing it, it's a big negotiation technique, because there has to be some better reason for watching the leader of the free world throw his toys out the pram in the Oval Office.
But that's
and he
really
might
important,
have just
though.
thrown his toys out the pram in the Oval Office and that not be the case.
He might have done, but I think there is a negotiation tactic here that, if I understand deals and transactions, and again, having come from a real estate background, which I did, the amount of meetings in which I was there, and all the toys did come out the pram, and everybody, you know, they lose their stuff and they get very upset and very angry and say some very stupid things, and then everybody... But what it does force people to do is to look again at their position and go, do we want this? And then, because... what you've got is you've got some things that Donald Trump is refusing to agree to. He genuinely does not want to write an open American checkbook in the same way that his predecessors did for this war. And what he's saying is, yeah, sure, I'll support you, but actually you're going to have to move, and I don't get any indication that you're prepared to do that. So in order to get them to move, he basically says the deal's off. And then, until or unless somebody comes back and goes, well, actually, we want the deal to happen, so where's it got to get to? Where have we got to get to? That is a negotiating technique, which from a real estate background, I've seen it all before, and I'm actually not surprised by that behaviour. But I don't expect that from the President of the United States, and I certainly don't expect the verbiage from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all of that. That in any sort of transaction, it almost reminded me of if you go into a used car sales room, and you're negotiating over a car, and the two sort of salesmen come on a bit too strong, and then Zelensky is the guy who walks out and leaves. That is the power move to leave the room ultimately. And much as Trump can say, well, I told him to leave. He still has those minerals that Trump wants. And I think that a lot of people saw that and interpreted the way that Trump was negotiating as being Trump not being on the same side as Zelensky and perhaps doing Russia's bidding. And that is the part that's concerning. Ukraine are supposed to be America's allies, and there wasn't a lot of evidence of that in the Oval Office. And there wasn't a lot of evidence of that as J.D. Vance was leaning across Trump demanding a thank you, like a pair of kind of, I don't know, mean girls in the playground.
Just finally on this particular story, I mean, it is going to continue to play out. What did the American people make of all this? Because I'd be surprised if they're actually able to pick out Ukraine on a map and pinpoint it correctly. And I think a lot of them simply don't understand why so many billions of their dollars are going to, to feed a war that they perhaps think is nothing to do with them.
Yeah, and I think that message has not necessarily been one, why should America be involved in this war is not necessarily a message that has reached a large number of the American people. Trump came in and said, well, I want peace. I'm going to make peace on day one. Trump wants to be seen as Trump wants his Nobel Peace Prize, right? He wants to be seen as the peacemaker in the Middle East, and he wants to be seen as the peacemaker in Ukraine.
Well, how's it going so far? I mean, he said that he wants Gaza to be turned into the US Riviera. And he's, whatever it is that he described it, and then he wants Ukraine, largely whatever gains the Russians have had, to be turned over to them. I mean, is it peace at any price?
Well, I think it is peace at any price for Donald Trump, and I think that to have Ukraine cut out of negotiations, Zelensky made his position very clear, and this was sort of, I think, in some ways, Donald Trump perhaps wouldn't understand Zelensky as a man. I mean, he's been very keen to kind of undermine Zelensky and talk down to him. But the idea, I think, that somebody would have the amount of integrity or principles that Zelensky has, I think, is very much a mystery to Donald Trump, who's not a man who would die for his country or for the people in it, but seeks to exploit the pain of the Ukrainian people for his own gain, for mineral gain, and it comes down to money. And yes, there are some people who support Donald Trump who buy into that, but there are an awful lot of people who have, even on the right of the country, who understand that for years Russia have been the bad guys, that Russia invaded Ukraine, and that to hear the President of the United States say otherwise is quite troubling.
It certainly is. Let's turn attention to just briefly some other stories. So Gene Hackman, of course, in the news this week, very sadly, no longer with us, sadly departed. Still many questions about what actually happened.
Yeah, a lot more questions than answers. So Gene Hackman, he was 95, was found dead alongside his wife at his Santa Fe, New Mexico home. And although there's sort of no signs of a gas leak, nothing like carbon monoxide, which you might think there was in that situation where there's a bit of a mystery. So Gene Hackman was found in the sort of boot room, the sort of mud room, where the entranceway of that home. He was on the ground. His wife was in the bathroom alongside a dog that had also passed away, but there were other dogs in the home that hadn't. There were pills surrounding the wife. She's 65, he's 95, and they've now got some analysis from his pacemaker that shows that there was no activity after February the 17th. So it's a reasonable assumption that that was the date that he died. And then some workmen came to the house a couple of days ago. They saw one of these bodies on the floor and called for authorities. As I said, no sign for a break-in. So a lot of questions about what went on, how this went on, and what the circumstances are surrounding the death of Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of his dogs.
Well, exactly, and it's a really tragic story. I'm sure we'll hear more. Just very quickly, let's talk about the Oscars. That's tomorrow. What are we expecting?
Yeah, Sunday, Oscars Sunday. It's a really interesting one, quite wide open for the Best Picture category. So obviously we're expecting lots of fancy dresses and various speeches, going to be hosted by Conan O'Brien. I doubt you've seen the one that's the lead for the main picture. It's called Anora.
what?
And that sort of ended up in the lead by default.
Anora?
Anora.
Oh,
I haven't seen it. It's a Russian movie. Anyway, it's quite unusual. There's a couple of international movies that are in that Best Picture category, because the film that had the most amount of nominations was Emilia Perez, and then there was a bit of a scandal involving some old tweets from one of the stars, and so that
there's
really
always a
scandal.
But
I'll tell you the Brits to watch out for, shall I? You might as well read the Brits. Our lovely Ray, the singer Ray, will be performing at the Oscars, which is very exciting for her. Good,
I mean, dare I say, every time I come onto the station, I mention the Royal Albert Hall, of which I'm a trustee, and wasn't it amazing that she did that in a fantastic gig last year at the Royal Albert Hall? I mean, what a performer. Amazing.
She's such a talent, and honestly, I think she's only just begun. But anyway, I'm delighted for her. I saw her last Saturday, went around her house, that's how I roll. John Powell, another Brit, who is up for the original score of Wicked. Felicity Jones. I was looking through the list, but anyway, quite a long list for Best Picture, but it is it's a really open category this year.
It absolutely is, and we'll be looking out for that. Just before I let you go, I need to ask for some advice from you, if I can.
Don't ask me. My life's a disaster.
Okay, well, Caroline Faraday, that's as may be. This isn't a therapy session. However, on the front page of today's Sun newspaper, it says, exclusive, love split Fern and the TV boss. What should one do when one finds that one of one's friends is splashed all over the tabloids? How does one respond to it? So inside there's a double-page split. Fern's back in a happy place 11 weeks on, and I was a little bit shocked to read this. So I'm just going to read what it says. Presenter Fern Cotton has found love again 11 weeks after a split from her husband, Jesse Wood. She was pictured kissing TV director Elliot Hegarty on a night out, and pals say she's back in a happy place. Now, there are pictures of Elliot, who I will now admit has been a very good friend of mine since the sort of mid to late 90s. It's quite disconcerting when you find one of your mates is splashed all over the tabloids. You must have seen it loads of times. How do I need to react to it? Do I need to go and get therapy? Do I get in touch?
You dark horse.
Well, I mean, I didn't say that. I've actually asked him if he's all right, and he is responding. He's saying, I said, I'm about to talk to you about it on air, and he said, be kind to me. So, I mean, look, it's not for me to make judgment. I mean, people, there are relationship split-ups. I mean, who knows what happens behind closed doors. But I think dark horse it kind of does describe it pretty well, because the last time we had conversations, he'd just come back from a lovely family holiday, and that was, it was all happy families. So God knows what's going on.
Yes, that was. You may have given more about his background than he might.
No, it says it's all in the papers. I mean, it's all here.
Oh, okay. I didn't read that particular.
No. It says that
stuff happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all picked up the newspaper, haven't we, and seen the person we think we're dating out on a date with someone else. That's always nice. That's always a nice moment when that happens.
I mean, nobody cares as far as I'm concerned. With my activities, so it's like whatever. So, what is your advice? I mean, do I get in touch? Do I not get in touch? Do I talk about it? Do I not talk about it? Do I, steer clear?
Do you talk about it on the air, or do you talk about it with him, you mean?
Either.
I mean, do your audience care about Fern Cotton's love life? Should be your...
It's on the front page of The Sun. This was printed in this building. Of course they do.
Well, then, talk about it.
OK, great.
There's your news judgment.
I don't know. I haven't been here enough recently to be able to look at my own news judgment. And it's one of the few ways that I can... I mean, it's either that or it's the front page of the Daily Star. Because I bet you missed the Daily Star being stuck in America.
I do, on occasion, get enormous joy from being sent the front page of the Daily Star.
Well, they've got an absolute humdinger today. A damn fine U-turn, they say. Starmy loves nice beavers. Nice beavers will be spread across the UK after a Keir Starmer U-turn opened the doors to a big beaver boom. And who wouldn't want to read more about that story?
They do enjoy themselves, those headline writers there, don't they?
They do. Well, when everything else is going on in the world, you've got to have a little bit of joy.
Yeah, it's like a little palate cleanser.
I think it's slightly
Probably
more
shouldn't have said that.
No, it's more than a palate cleanser. Frankly, it's a bit of a double entendre fest. That's what it is.
Yes.
Anyway, Caroline Faraday, thank you very much indeed. And that was...
Lovely to see you. Wish me luck for the next week.
Oh, yeah. Good luck for the next week. Ruining my outro link there. It was all going so well. That was Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
Yee-boo. I mean, seriously? I mean, I know I'm not supposed to extract the Michael and I should big it up. But, I mean, I like the idea of having a nice little jingle and a bit of, invested talent to that. But it's like, couldn't you do better? If I was in charge, I'd fire the lot of you. But I'm not. Anyway, we're going to be continuing with a whole range of conversations, going to be joined by Piers Pottinger and political commentator and also former Labour advisor Joe Ryle. So we're going to be doing that. And I promise I'm going to come to your calls. It's 0344 499 1000. Plus, I'm also very, very behind on the old text. I'm going to catch up on those two. That's all coming up next on Talk.
They need help. I'll always be with the British, okay? I'll always be with them. But they don't need help. You look at their career, you have done very well over the years, haven't you?
We have. I'm very proud of our country. But we've also always been backing each other up between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we've absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could
core
you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:27 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you until 10 here on Talk, with your Saturday breakfast show, where we've been talking about, yes, the big stories of the day, and if you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so. I've been asking you this morning about Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and of course, that seemed to go pretty well. But then we had Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and I'm asking, how do you respond to what's happened in the last 48 hours? You can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. You can send me a text, 87222. Don't forget to start your text with the word talk. And you can send me a message on the old socials at talkTV, at the James Max. So, if you want to join that conversation, please do. And I'm really behind on the old texts and things. And so if you want to jump to the front of the queue, we'll do the calls. Anyway, joining me live in the studio, political commentator Piers Pottinger and also former Labour advisor Joe Ryle. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
I mean, what a day. We've got sort of united front pages. When you've got the tabloids largely leaning on the same story as the lead. So the Times, meltdown in the Oval Office. Trump tells Zelensky he's risking World War III, make a deal or we're out, and say thank you, demand the Americans. Daily Mail, slightly different view on it. They say a raging Trump humiliates Zelensky on live TV. A spectacle to horrify the world is what they say. The Sun, the Fight House, Trump no deal, get out. Zelensky risking World War III. The Eye, a slightly more measured response, shouting match in Oval Office. Trump tries to humiliate Zelensky live on television. The Telegraph, make a deal or we're out. The Daily Express, bust up, leaves Trump's peace talks in crisis. The Mirror, shock and war. Trump stuns world with vile rant at Zelensky. They say, you are gambling with World War III, says Trump on the front page of The Guardian. And even the FT goes with the story as well. Zelensky's White House talks breakdown in blaze of acrimony. Piers, let's start with you. What on earth do you make of what's happened in the Oval Office?
Well, I think Trump is a great disruptor, and he's proved it this week. Every meeting he's had has been staged, and I actually think the Zelensky outburst was staged. It was very, very extraordinary. For example, this all kicked off when a journalist, unprompted, in the Oval Office, suddenly said to Zelensky, do you think it's suitable, you're suitably dressed for the occasion here in the Oval Office? Because he's wearing his black T-shirt and trousers. And this completely threw Zelensky, and then it all got very nasty. I think this was staged by Trump deliberately. He's pulling all the strings. Europe looks incredibly weak. I think never has Europe looked less strong as an entity. It's rudderless. There's no obvious leader of Europe. And also NATO is looking very shaky. People in all their discussions about NATO forget who is the second biggest force in NATO, and that is Turkey. Turkey's military force is 3 times the size of the UK, for example, and Turkey, with Erdogan at the moment, he is very much on the side of Putin.
Let me ask you a question, though, just about some of these sort of manoeuvres. That I think some people say they're very surprised or outraged by Trump's outburst. I mean, we've seen it before. We'll see it again. This is, if he thinks that somebody is being too steadfast and isn't going to move, he knows that in order to negotiate something, people are going to have to move. And Putin's going to have to move, and indeed Zelensky's going to have to move. And what he sees is somebody who has stuck their heels in very effectively and had the support of the West largely until now. And as you say, I think the more we consider this and what he's done, is this is calculated by Trump to basically say, this is all off, is that really what you want? To then come back and go, well, no, we really do want to get to, OK, so where are you going to move? And that's kind of his... Is that the tactic that he's... Am I giving him too much credit for that?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what he is doing. And I think he's learned a lot from his first term in office. He's being much smarter this time round. And he also has done a great deal that is popular in America.
And is that, I mean, Joe, let me bring you into this, Joe Ryle. So as we look at the response, if you like, to Trump, that what we're also seeing is he's playing Macron, he's playing our Prime Minister, because he knows that he cannot have a spat like that with them. He has to use different ways in order to get the deals that he wants. And the deal that he wanted from Britain is exactly what he got. And Starmer kind of read the room. Starmer knows that Trump is enchanted by the royal family and all things British, things that you can't buy. And he offered them. He gave them to him. So kind of you've got to congratulate Keir Starmer, haven't you, for playing the game?
In a way, this is sort of backfired for Starmer, though, because, you know, he's sucking up to Trump, you know, and I think we have to remember the facts that, you know, like Russia started this war, not Ukraine. I think, you know, some of the stuff that Trump's been saying, attacking Zelensky, Ukraine, is really unfair. And, you know, I haven't watched the full clip, but I watched the kind of the highlight reel this morning of that, the kind of footage from the Oval Office, and it actually reminded me of kind of bullies in the playground. You know, you had the kind of like Trump and Vance of all the power, and, you know, Zelensky kind of sat in the corner, and it actually reminded me of kind of bullies in the playground. They're the ones with the power, and I think, you know, it showed a nastier side to Donald Trump, and I do think there's a real danger in the UK just doing whatever we can to suck up to Donald Trump.
Sure, but you say a nastier side to Donald Trump. Joe Biden had a nasty side, but we never saw it. So it was actually in terms of what they did. I mean, for example, what the Americans did when it came to withdrawing from Iraq and various other things. We have seen huge problems as a result of that. It was done in a very nice way. We didn't see a nasty side, but we certainly felt the effects of it and have done since. In the same way that we are perhaps seeing some of the nastier side of, again, Joe Biden, with some of the decisions that he took based on, you know, undermining American almost democratic processes by giving the pardons that he did, that almost gave Donald Trump the pass to do exactly the same with his supporters. So you can say it's a nastier side to Trump, but with Trump, at least you get it what it says on the tin.
I mean, that's fair enough, and, you know, I'm not saying Joe Biden did anything good to stop the war in Ukraine, really. And, you know, I guess Trump, opportunities present themselves, but partly because Trump is just so unpredictable. You know, you never know what he's going to do, what he's going to say, who he's going to bring together.
You say that, but then, as Piers said, this was entirely predictable because we know how he operates.
Well, also, I mean, he's now thrown it very much back into the European court. And what is Europe going to do? There's this huge meeting tomorrow, very important meeting at Lancaster House, where an awful lot of key participants who should be there are not there. So it's already starting as a kind of lame meeting. And what are they going to do? What I would be looking at is seizing Russian assets that are actually currently frozen in European institutions. There's £240 billion of Russian assets currently frozen. Now,
should we use that money?
Well, I think we should use it to defend Ukraine. Why not? Use their own
Joe,
money.
Would you agree with that?
I disagree with that. Yeah, I mean, you know, we do need to stand. I think we want to see a bit more backbone from Starmer and this government. We can't just go over and bend over backwards. Or something, because they're just doing whatever Trump wants at the moment. We'll see what happens. You know, maybe he's got some things he wanted from Trump at this moment, but I think it's going to backfire in the face.
I mean, you say you want backbone from Starmer, but we know that's not going to happen. When he hasn't demonstrated since he arrived, other than with, you know, rioters who, not even the rioters, the people who put nasty stuff on Facebook, he sent them to prison, so that was a bit of a backbone. But when it actually came to dealing with stuff, not a bit of it.
But Starmer at the moment looks more like a man of action than Ursula von der Leyen, the most useless leader of the European community. And I mean, what's she going to do? What she should be saying is, look at these Russian assets, let's hit them hard where it hurts most, in their trouser pocket.
But she's got too many people. The further east you go, the more Russian gas they're still using, and the more issues that they've got. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's not as simple as I'm saying, but, I mean, it is something...
But you've got a fractured Europe as well. I mean, all you have to do is have a look at the recent results in terms of whether it's the rise of the right or all sorts of issues which have taken place. And the EU is beginning to come more and more into focus, in the sense that many of the problems that Europe faces, and many of the reasons why Europe isn't perhaps as galvanised as it might be, you can point your finger at immigration, you can point your finger at freedom of movement of people, which is all very well if you're middle class and well educated. But in fact, what it's done is it's excited those people who want to have freedom of movement because they have the education and the money and the wherewithal to go and do it. It's wonderful, and they can go and live with their second homes or do whatever they like and use their health passes. But what it's also done is it has facilitated mass migration, the sort that we've never seen before, creating huge social tensions right across Europe because nobody was prepared for it, and they didn't decide that alongside with that they didn't put the measures in place that if you're going to have mass migration in order to mitigate it, and we're now reaping the rewards.
I think if you look at the problems the country faces right now, the real problems we face, we've got huge levels of child poverty. We've got people who can't afford to rent in housing. People can't afford to get in the housing ladder. University tuition fees are 50 grand a year. None of these problems are the fault of migrants.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. No, they're absolutely not. This is a problem of an economic system.
Rising house prices have nothing to do with the fact that we have 8 million extra people living in our country and we didn't prepare for them.
It's partly the fact we haven't built enough houses. We haven't built any council houses so people can live in them. That's the wider...
Well, why should people...
We've had a housing crisis in this year going back for 10, 15 years
Yes, we
now.
have.
We haven't built enough housing.
And we
haven't built
still
the right
allowed
housing.
people to come into this country without making those provisions.
There's
I
loads
agree
of
with you.
people
You blame people for it. But if you're, or you shouldn't blame people for it, but if you are the government and you are making these decisions that are opening your borders, fine, because the short-term economic gain, and then you are not building the infrastructure, the schools, the hospitals, the houses, the roads, the rail, and all the infrastructure, because basically you're taking the money, sticking it, doing whatever it is for your political gain, and then you don't prepare for your country for the fact that you've got these extra millions of people. It's problematic. Anyway, we'll have another row about that in just a few moments' time here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So in the studio with me, Piers Pottinger, political commentator, and also Joe Ryle, former Labour advisor, as we go through some of those stories. I mean, with having a little bit of a row about various things, and I have been asking the question this morning after Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and indeed Vladimir Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. How do you respond to the last 48 hours? We'll come back to you two gents in a moment. However, I promised I would turn to calls, so here we are. I can't be a politician. I promised something, I've delivered. Stephen is in Spain. Hi, Stephen.
Oh, good morning, James. Nice to see you back on Talk.
It's nice to be back, Stephen.
Anyway, very exciting the last 24 hours. It's very refreshing to see blunt speaking amongst politicians rather than all the nice handshaking and backslapping.
Joe Ryle is nodding his head at you. Joe, are you in agreement then with Stephen that somebody needed to say and do what Trump has said?
I would say that's the one thing I like about Trump, that he does seem to just say what he thinks. Obviously, that has problems as well. But going back to this story, it was interesting. In 2019, Keir Starmer was criticising Boris Johnson for sucking up to Donald Trump, and you've got 5 years later, Keir Starmer doing exactly the same thing. And I think that suggests a wider problem with politics at the moment. You can't believe a word any of our political leaders say. And I think people are crying out for change.
So people are crying out for change, Stephen. So does the change come in the form of Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, or does it come in the form of perhaps revolution here in the UK? I mean, there you are based in Spain, and as Piers was saying, you got Ursula von der Leyen, von der useless. I mean, we didn't think that we could find anybody more useless than Herman Van Rompuy, and we did.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the whole globe is in a state of flux, isn't it? And it all comes down to debt. Wherever you look, there's debt. Everybody, and this is what Trump's about. Trump knows money, and he's looking at it from the point of view of the balance sheet for the USA. I understand exactly where he's coming from. He doesn't want to pay out. He wants to get some money back in. A lot's happening. We've got equal problems in the UK. We can't afford to give our pensioners the £300.
No.
We've got problems everywhere.
We do have problems everywhere, but how on earth do you solve those problems, Stephen? Because ultimately, we've had these conversations that Liz Truss tried to say, I'll grow the economy. Sadly, her lack of economic understanding meant that she pushed the wrong buttons. And we've now got Rachel from Accounts who's saying, I'm going to grow the economy, and she hasn't got a Scooby-Doo. It would appear as if economics may be something she put on her CV, but wasn't actually a piece of reality. Basic economics tells you that if you start putting up taxation, if you increase your nation's debt without being able to afford it, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt was when you can pay for it, bad debt is when you can't. And we are putting up the cost of our debt, which means we're getting more money in through the coffers because we put out our tax rates, but we're sucking that money out of the economy, we're sucking it into paying off more debt, and it's not making a difference. I mean, Stephen, what do we do?
Well, James, I've said to you before, and you disagreed with me at the time, there needs to be a return of capital controls. Back to the old days when, in the 80s, you had to show your passport and you could take out £150 with your passport, and nations looked after themselves.
Oh, no, that's a stupid idea. You can't stop freedom of movement of money, Stephen. That genie's out the bottle.
Cyprus. It happened in Cyprus. It's happened in other countries. You won't be told. It will happen over a weekend when there's a reset. Trump's already going there. Fortress America.
Fortress America. Well, I mean, you heard it here first. What do you make of what Stephen says? I mean, do you think we've got to bring back credit controls? I mean, I remember my grandfather telling me the story that when he went on holiday, basically you stuffed notes into pants, but not your pants as an adult, as children, because the children were never searched.
I can remember that. And
did that? I mean, that was a thing.
Happened, yeah. And also, of course, just after the war, British tourists going abroad would take tea and coffee to barter for gins and tonics because there was a shortage of tea and coffee in most of continental Europe. No, I don't think these controls are what's needed at all. What we need to do
the controls that you could put in place, given that we can now pay for things with our phones, given that we have electronic transfer of cash,
it wouldn't work.
It just wouldn't work.
No, and also what we should be doing, though, is looking at the principal reason for the mass immigration problem we have, and that is far from what Yvette Cooper is doing, which is tinkering with laws about prosecuting people who endanger lives at sea. That's not going to make any difference. What's going to make a difference is removing the incentive for people to come here. The reason all these people come here and risk their lives coming here is because they know that the end of it is a pot of gold.
So the pot of gold, Joe, do you agree with that we've got to remove the incentives for people to come here?
No, I think migrants also make a positive contribution to this country as well. I don't think we hear enough about that. And actually, look,
if it wasn't for migration, I wouldn't be here. So I'm third generation and all that sort of business, which is fine. Yeah. But there is a difference though between somebody who we say, they can't possibly come here, there are no safe routes. Well, hundreds of thousands of people managed to get here legally, and they didn't take small boats. So surely what we have to do with the small boats is simply say, we're just going to have a zero tolerance. If you want to come to this country, if you've got genuine routes for asylum or otherwise, there are plenty of means by which you can come here. If you come here on a boat...
Because that's partly what the kind of refugee advocacy organisations are saying, is there is no legal access to safe routes. So how do you get here safely?
But if you're in France...
I'm not saying it's a good thing that people have to get in a boat. It's dangerous for them. It's desperate. It's their last, last resort. It's not a good situation. But
hang on a second. The last time I went to France, it's a pretty nice country, and it certainly has Western values, and there are all sorts of things. So, to my mind, there is no valid reason that if you are claiming asylum, that you are not. Now, you might want to be in Britain, but it doesn't mean that you can or should come to Britain. You made it to France partly because of Schengen and partly because of freedom of movement of people. Well, we're not part of that anymore, so we can and should have different rules. This is costing us billions and billions and billions of pounds a year, and nobody from any side of the political spectrum, other than maybe Nigel Farage, is coming up with anything that resembles some kind of strong policy. Am I against immigration? No. Am I against making sure that we have the right numbers coming to this country? Of course we should. But when anybody says to me, oh, well, the reason that we've got a housing crisis isn't because of immigration. Sorry, you've got your eyes shut. We've got 8 million extra people. It's like inviting somebody over to your house and saying, please stay the night, and you don't bother to put a duvet on the bed, and you don't give them a towel, and you lock the bathroom door.
Of course we need to manage the migration system. The point I'm trying to make is that people talk about it way too much. We've had austerity in this country since 2010, where all of our public services have been cut. We've had Brexit, we've had the pandemic, we've had so many things
that
have let
hundreds of thousands of people into this country every single year, which is costing our public services more. We based our public services on different numbers.
The positive. You're just not mentioning at all the positive contribution they make to the economy as well. Who's
the fact they're working in nail bars and not paying any tax?
Well, no, you go into the NHS. Who's there treating us? Who's there kind of helping us?
Yeah, because we're not paying our own staff, and we've cut the people that we're training here.
Yeah, because we cut everything.
And I'm surprised that people from the left. I'm surprised that people from the left are so excited about having people coming from overseas. So they're trained overseas, and you're taking them away from those health services and creating a problem elsewhere. We've just exported our problem by importing cheap labour. We're not paying our people properly.
Even Angela Rayner can't answer the question. She's trying to build 1.5 million new houses in the life of this Parliament, which I think won't happen at all. But anyway, even if she does that, and she's boasting about it, it's still not going to fulfil the needs that we have already.
I don't think.
And how many of them are affordable housing as well? I guess.
That's as may be. But the question is, affordable is a tangible task. And the thing is that when you come to building houses, is it really the nation or the state's job to build the vast majority of houses? And I would say no, it's there to facilitate. But until or unless the government understand that you've got to have the workers, as Piers mentions, but you've also got to have the finance available. And we've made finance very difficult, and we've just added a whole load of tax that has made building houses more expensive because of national insurance and various other changes. I mean, this is an absolute mess. But talking of mess, we'll be discussing some more of that in a moment and taking more of your calls here on Talk.
first resignation from the cabinet of a Labour minister. It's Annalise Dodds, the development minister. She has resigned over the government's cuts to the foreign aid budget, cuts that were made to fund an increase in defence spending. A massive increase, but it wasn't, was it? Because early this week, all Sir Keir Starmer was reveal that international aid would be cut from 0.5% to 0.3% of GDP. And that money would go to defence instead, which is rising from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:53 is the time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. It's me, James Max, with you until 10 o'clock with your weekend breakfast show. David Bull, sadly ill, so we wish him a very swift recovery. I mean, some of you might be wishing that it's swifter than maybe it will be for tomorrow, because I'm going to be back again tomorrow from 6. Joe Ryan and I were just having a little brief conversation. In fact, we were having a bit of a sort of career thing. So Piers and I worked together some years ago on a massive transaction when I actually had a real job. And Joe Ryle was saying that he has a real job, which many of you who are listening and watching will probably disagree with. What's your job, Joe?
Well, I'm the director of the 4 Day Week Foundation. So as I was saying, we've worked with hundreds of companies in the private sector that have moved to a 4-day working week successfully so far. Who's
moved successfully to a 4-day week?
Well, we've had over 400 companies, 220 accredited us in the kind of housing sector, legal sector, manufacturing, retail, all sorts of companies.
And so do you say to people, basically, you can work 4 days in a week? I mean, do the companies operate for 5 days a week, but the staff can pick between...
Some. Most people go for a 4-day week, you know, you can have a Friday off if you can, but for others there's lots of rotation of days off. Some people might have a Wednesday off, a Monday off, if they still need to kind of serve clients 5 days a week.
And are they paid the same?
Yeah, paid the same.
And they do the same number of hours, but just in 4 days, not 5?
No, reduction of working hours.
What?
Pay remains the same. And as the studies have found...
How does that work?
Well, because people tend to be more productive and actually perform better in their jobs in 4 days rather than 5.
This is the stuff of pish and nonsense.
I can send you the hundreds of studies that show that you can be more productive in 4 days rather than 5.
Listen, you've successfully advised some of the most famous politicians and the biggest and most successful entrepreneurs this country has ever known. 4-day week, good idea?
No, it's crazy. I mean, how do you say to a client, for example, I'm sorry, it's Friday, I can't speak to you? Because I
that's why you'd have a rotation of days off where some staff work on Friday.
It doesn't work.
It does work, and
hundreds of companies have done it. It actually is... I mean, if
you make widgets though, and the widget machine is working, and you could say to somebody, and I would actually say, I'd like you to do the same hours, but in four days you can choose. That I sort of get, and you're producing the widget, and it's not customer facing. But if it's you, Piers, that we want, and you suddenly say, well, I'm going to a 4-day week, I mean, that would be a disaster for your business.
Of course it would, and I'm not saying it won't work in all businesses. Some businesses, particularly where in manufacturing, where if demand is slow, there's no point running a whole business, having all the machinery turning, if it's not needed. I can understand that. But when it comes to growth, which I think is the mantra Rachel Reeves still seems to believe in, even though everything she does goes against it, 4-day week isn't going to go for achieve growth. And the next thing you know, what comes after a 4-day week? A 3-day week. I mean, it's absurd. It's nonsense.
Are you going to be campaigning for a 3-day week, Joe?
No, one step at a time. I mean, look, it's taken 100 years to get from a 6-day. It was 100 years ago that we moved from a 6-day week to a 5-day week, and I think all the productivity gains we've had in the economy over the last few decades, it's time for actually those to be passed back to workers in terms of more free time, more leisure time.
Now, there is an element of me that says that we probably do need to consider how we work and changing the system that we have. AI is going to disrupt an awful lot of what we do. I mean, say, for example, if I'm being a bit cheeky and I'm having to do some kind of release or sort something out or whatever it is, the amount that AI will do, it can't do the whole job, but it can certainly save a huge chunk of the mucking around on the way.
Oh, yes.
So if that is the case and our productivity improves, I mean, can we prepare ourselves for the fact that we may very well be able to have more leisure time?
Absolutely. And AI, you've hit upon the absolute key here. I'm actually, I declare myself here, I'm an investor and advisor to a company that is in AI in education. And what they've developed is a fantastic scheme which saves teachers a day a week on marking homework. There are all kinds of things where AI can be incredibly useful. At the same time, there are obvious dangers, and we have to be aware of the dangers, and we need to be able to control AI before it controls us.
I have a very important question of the day to ask both of you before I let you leave the studio. So last night at the Frinton-on-Sea Lawn Tennis Club, of which I chair, it is a CASC, it's a community amateur sporting club, but we had a members' night and we had a quiz. And one of the quiz questions, I was quite surprised by the answer. What percentage of Brits are opposed to tea dunking, i.e. dunking your biscuits in your tea? This is a bona fide survey which has been done on various things, various habits and whatever. What percentage would you say? Joe, I'll start with you.
That are opposed?
That are opposed to tea dunking. What percentage out of 100 do not like?
45%.
I was going to say 46, so we're very close here.
You are, and one of you is right.
Wow.
Piers, you are right, it's 46%.
My goodness.
Yeah. It is 46. I mean, are you a tea dunker?
No, I don't have milk in my tea. I don't drink milk.
Oh.
So I drink, always, my tea is Lapsang Souchong.
Oh, that's a very good tea.
And I love my Lapsang, but I never put milk in it or anything else.
And I wouldn't, no, you see, with the Lapsang, I wouldn't dunk either. Joe, are you a dunker?
Sometimes, not very often.
Sometimes. That's a difficult question to turn to, but there we are. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in. That's Piers Pleasure, political commentator, and also Joe Ryle, former Labour advisor. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure we probably could have got into some more rows, but we must move on. And the music means that we are moving on, because after the break we have Graham Davies, presentation coach and expert, to tell us what he thought of the performance of Donald Trump and also Zelensky and Keir Starmer in the last 48 hours. I promise that we will be coming to your calls as well. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. You can, of course, send me a text, 87222. And if that wasn't enough, yes, we will be joined by radio royalty. Oh, sorry, they're busy. Steve Denyer will be in to bring you up to date with all the big celebrity news and gossip. And we may be very well turning our attention to some more beaver action. Yes, that's all coming up on your Weekend Breakfast Show here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 9 o'clock. Very good morning to you. It's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk. Yes, I am in for David Bull, who is sadly off ill. We wish him a speedy recovery. But I can also give you the news that I will be with you tomorrow morning from 6 o'clock with Sunday Breakfast. So very much hope you'll join me then. But between now and 10, we've got all sorts coming up. Going to be turning our attention to analysis, I guess, of what's happened over the last 48 hours. The thoughts and performances of Trump, Zelensky and Starmer in the last 48 hours. Been speaking to Graham Davies, presentation coach expert, about all of that. Plus taking your calls, and I promise I will get to the calls and the messages. I've been very, very slack. I'm so sorry. It's been a little bit busy, but no more excuses from me. We've been talking about Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America, and indeed Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. How do you respond to the last 48 hours? Do you think that this is clever and calculated by Donald Trump? Or do you think that this is leading to World War III and significant involvement perhaps from us in the UK and across Europe, having to step up to the plate and spend more of our money on defence? What is your response to the last 48 hours? 0344 499 1000, and some other stories that we still may talk about. The future of Bond is in discussion. Plus, I'm going to be joined live in the studio by Steve Denyer as we look ahead to the Oscars and indeed the Brit Awards. So plenty to come here on Talk. And if that wasn't enough, it is St David's Day today, where Wales celebrates its patron saint. A parade takes place in Cardiff to celebrate and remember the Dewi Sant, the son of a nun, who could perform miracles.
Ivor the engine. Look, there he is. And he's absolutely rushing down the hill from Dinwiddie's gold mine. Oh, yes. Jones the steam and Mr. Dinwiddie are bringing a lump of gold to show to Di. Mr. Dinwiddie is going to buy the railway.
This is the first time that producer Dave has played something as a clip that I've really enjoyed. Ivor the Engine, one of my favourites growing up. You can age me now. Ivor the Engine, what a... Deep in my distant past, I found some wonderful art, like which was from that particular show and signed by the artist and everything else. And I have Ivor the Engine on one of my walls. Love Ivor the Engine. So thank you for that, Dave. You did well. Gold star. Which is very unusual for me to give out a gold star to anyone, let alone Dave. Anyway, talking of Wales, it's National Welsh Corgi Day. Adored by late Queen Elizabeth II, she's known to have had more than 30 of the short-haired dogs. Corgi means dwarf dog in Welsh. Slightly less impressed with that on the basis that it is somewhat cliched, but you know, if that's what you want to do, let the dogs out. And I still haven't found the story, which is in one of the papers, about the king who's got a new dog, and I'm not quite sure where it is. Oh no, it's not that one. That's the paper. I'm looking at the Sun here. That's the paper with my friend splashed all over the pages. Dear, oh dear, what do you do? Oh, here we go. Now I found it. I found the dog story. The King, this is in today's Sun newspaper, which is probably better that I turn away from pages 8 and 9, which is talking about love split Fern Cotton and the TV boss. Well, the TV boss came in a few weeks ago to review my papers when we was talking about rivals. Anyway, you can read that for yourselves in the Sun. Some of it's true. Anyway, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I've got to have a lunch before I find out. Anyway, the King has a new spaniel. His first dog for more than 2 decades. Charles is said to be besotted with the pooch, which arrived as a surprise gift 4 weeks ago. Called Snuff, he is a Legato Romanino, which is a truffle hunting breed from Italy. It doesn't look like the sort of dog that they say it is. Whether they printed the way... Anyway, dog. All I know is dogs are very expensive, and a week ago... I'm afraid I would have to advocate for banning fisher people on our shores. Why? Because Dog Stanley ate a fishhook, which the fisher person had stupidly left lying on the beach with some bait in it, and didn't think that they need to leave it in a box. So sadly my dog ate it. A rush to the vet, rather expensive, thankfully insured. Hopefully I'll get some of the money back. What a palaver. Dog had to be operated on, stitches and things and everything. Anyway, you'll be very pleased to hear that Stan has made a full recovery, clean bill of health yesterday. It's amazing how quickly they repair after just a week of open stomach surgery had to be done. It was really quite grim. Poor old thing. Anyway, maybe you agree or disagree, but I would ban fisher people from public beaches. Just ban it. And if you can't behave, if you can't put your hooks away, they're dangerous. You leave them lying around on the beach, you leave all that stupid cable and wire and everything and leave your mess, and then you just leave stuff out and you go, oh, you can't control your dog. Well, you can't control a dog if you've got leaving all that bait lying around. Lock it up! I've had a rant. Anyway, talking of animals, it's World Pig Day. In honour of smart but often misunderstood swines. Pigs can be domesticated, we know that. But legend has it that one in 1772 was able to tell the time, count, and make some tricks on command. He was called, not Percy, but Learned Pig.
I'm Peppa Pig. This is my little brother George. This is Mummy Pig. And this is Daddy Pig. Peppa Pig.
I think that's quite enough of that. I've not really been a big Peppa Pig fan, to be honest. My nieces and nephews, they absolutely love it. I'm more Percy Pig than Peppa Pig. Apparently Mummy Pig is now pregnant. Wondered how that happened. Don't know. It'll end up in the sun soon. Anyway, 0344 499 1000 to join the conversation. Slightly more serious subject, and I guess I was just distracting away from how serious it is. It's on the front pages of all your national papers this morning. Inevitably, that row in the Oval Office yesterday, really quite shocking. Unless you understand what Trump is doing. And I wonder how choreographed this is. And the more I think about it, the more I perhaps think about his tactics, is that he's dealing with a man who comes in with a huge popularity rating and also is very steadfast in his position. And if you're dealing with somebody like that and you can't get them to move to the negotiating table, you know where the people are going to have to move on both sides in order, unless you have defeat of one or the other. So what Trump knows is that defeat by Russia over Ukraine or Ukraine over Russia is never going to happen, which means that a negotiated settlement is absolutely necessary. So if that's the case, both sides have to move. And if that's the case, and one side is looking as if it's not going to move at all, you're going to break it. And he's broken it in order to move it back together. That's my latest theory, to give Donald Trump any kind of credit at all. Having said that, I also think that the way that Keir Starmer and Macron were used were also like sort of pawns on the lead up to this, because they were treated so nicely and it was all very pally-pally and all this sort of business. But I think we actually probably need an expert to give us some analysis. But before I do that, let me just read you the telephone number. It's 0344 499 1000. After Keir Starmer's visit to the United States and Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, how do you respond to the last 48 hours? Are you, like me, thinking, actually, this was probably quite calculated and this was designed as a classic deal-doing tactic to get people who were not moving to move? Graham Davis, however, his presentation coach expert, tells us perhaps what he thought of the performances of Trump, Zelensky and indeed Starmer in the last 48 hours. Graham, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. So, who wins the Oscar and who gets the Rotten Tomato? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, what we saw last night in the Oval Office was an inevitable implosion, because it's something that I believe Trump wanted to a certain extent, but J.D. Vance wanted absolutely with every fibre of his being. I believe it was indeed a calculated ploy, but I believe also that their calculations went somewhat awry, because once you shout at someone in public, they are very likely to not want to agree with you in private. They've chosen the wrong man to bully with Zelensky.
Do you think, though, that I agree that if you do shout or if you lose your temporal control, then it's very problematic, even in a negotiation. I mean, all these things. I've always taken the view that you can say very difficult things, but you don't necessarily have to say it in the sort of way that shows a loss of control. J.D. Vance, though, seems to delight in saying things. I mean, look at his stance. I mean, he says that it's inappropriate to sort of sit in the Oval Office in, you know, sort of anything other than a suit and tie. I would say a suit and tie is extremely old-fashioned. And actually to sit with your mansplained legs as far apart as he does is actually quite arrogant and quite rude, given that you're sitting in front of the world's press, and you should perhaps sit with a little bit more decorum. But he doesn't seem to have decorum.
We saw, in fact, triple mansplaining last night because Vance, Trump, and to be fair, Zelensky were all doing it. It seems to be the new macho, well, not stance, the sitting equivalent of a stance for politics in the 21st century. But really, Zelensky's problem started when he got onto a plane in the first place. Because if there were nuances of the agreement that needed to be sorted out, he really should have done them at distance rather than getting on the plane, getting into a press conference situation leading up to what was supposedly an inevitable signing of the deal.
But do you think, though, that this is
in his mind that if he and Trump got together in a room, they would sort things out face-to-face, mano a mano, and that was never going to happen.
Right, you're a presentation coach. I mean, wouldn't you say to anybody to go into a press conference before you've even had a chance to meet is absolutely bonkers? And somebody should have said, no, the press conference happens after our meeting.
I completely agree with you on that one. I found it very strange that a press conference occurred with Macron and with Starmer before the substantive meeting. And that, but of course, when it was going to happen for the third time, and by that I mean with Zelensky, actually, Zelensky's people were lulled into a false sense of security. And I absolutely agree. The time for a press conference is after the substantive talks and not before.
In terms of Keir Starmer, he probably will have thought after his visit to the United States of America that it was already rather good. He choreographed the letter from the King in a sort of way that Donald Trump loved it. Donald Trump lapped it up. They seem to be getting on great guns, which, given their differences on so many aspects, is, in a sense, rather surprising. But then it all rather looks now as if that was choreographed in the same way that we expected sparks with Macron. They didn't happen. We expected sparks with Starmer, perhaps, over Chagos or various other things. That didn't happen. And then this was perhaps lulling Zelensky into thinking, OK, right, well, you know, this is all going to be very straightforward and we're going to be able to push and get what we want and move our relationship forward. And the reality was that Trump was always going to upset the apple cart. He's going to I'm going to go nice with these guys. They're putting more money in. They've got to put more money in. They've got the message. They're moving. That's fine. We'll leave them alone. Lull this guy who isn't moving at all, and we're just going to break it. And that's kind of what he's done. And I think that the longer we look at this, the more we'll realise that maybe Trump is an absolute genius and master not because he's unpredictable, but actually because he's able to do things that other people have been unable to do.
I believe that Vance and Trump were certainly trying to break Zelensky, but I also believe that they failed. It was an interesting tipping point when, after Trump had done his opening monologue and Zelensky was doing his and making some pretty firm anti-Putin points, that suddenly Vance jumped in and asked him 3 sequential questions and said there was a need for diplomacy. Zelensky started trying to answer the first question, and then Trump jumped on him and said, that's enough, you've already talked a lot already. And Zelensky said, I was just trying to answer the vice president's questions. And then suddenly, Trump and Vance turned from being President and Vice President of the United States into a hyena tag team, not allowing Zelensky to speak. And indeed, when Trump would pause, Vance would leap in on the pause. This was a moment of calculated shouting down. And of course, the Vance continued refrain, "You've never said thank you. You never said thank you," increased the tension and the belittling to almost thermonuclear levels.
Okay. And is there any way back from this?
If we treat it as an irretrievable disaster, it will be an irretrievable disaster. But I say full marks to the Foreign Office spokesman from Ukraine last night, who sort of said, well, we can always go forward on this, because that is the diplomatic point of view. All three people in that room were politicians, not diplomats. Diplomats and a diplomatic approach mean that we can forget the hyena horror show of yesterday and move on. I believe that there will be a move on, but Zelensky and Ukraine have definitely not been broken.
And just finally to you, as we look at, I don't know, Keir Starmer, he's got this conference here over the weekend on Sunday where they talk about the future of Ukraine and various other things with European leaders and all that stuff. I mean, I'm assuming that this is, his opportunity to take a more central point. But is he going to be able to do so? And how does he come out of, the last 48 hours on the basis that it was looking good and then he's been overshadowed again?
The first impression, certainly, that I had when Starmer walked out of the room in the White House was that he had pulled off something of a coup. It was a 7.5 out of 10 performance, but actually that was the maximum performance that anybody could have come out with. But now I suspect he's got a little bit of a diplomatic hangover, and the best that he can come out with is indeed to be some sort of strange transatlantic power broker between Zelensky and Trump. I'm not sure that he's emotionally suited to that role, but there was a Shakespeare, it is where greatness has been thrust upon him, and he better pick up the baton, or else there will be continued conflict between Trump and Zelensky for a long time to come.
There we go. Graham Davies, presentation coach, expert. Thank you very much indeed for giving us your thoughts on the most extraordinary last 48 hours. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. Let's go to Mike, who's in Coventry. Mike, good morning.
Morning, James.
Morning, Mike. So, what can you tell me?
Well, Starmer got played, didn't he? He literally got lied to by Trump. Trump literally just lied through his teeth.
Did he?
Yeah, the thing with calling Zelensky a dictator, for instance, you know yourself, he dodged that one. And when he was being interviewed, he was saying, oh, we'll try this, we'll try that. It's pretty obvious that Trump had no intention of doing anything other than trying to get the rare earth materials.
And when it comes to Britain's place in all of this, I mean, are we going to have to pump more money into defence? Are we going to have to, if we have to choose between, or do we have to choose between our relationship with the EU and European nations and the US on the basis that there appears to be a rift like never before? Alternatively, do we tie our mast to one country rather than another?
Well, there's that security meeting in Munich tomorrow, isn't there? There's going to have to be something thrashed out of that, basically, where we don't sort of hang Ukraine out to dry. I mean, I heard a couple of people ring up earlier today, and they were having a go at Zelensky, and I couldn't believe it. Why are they having a go at him when you got Putin, who's pure evil? I mean, you remember Alex Levenko, London, got poisoned with radioactive polonium-210.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've had the Skripals, we've had that. We've had a range of attacks on our shores. We've had continued attack. We probably don't know the full detail of all the sort of hacking or otherwise. We've had significant individuals who have made off like bandits as a result of the creation of the oligarchy and the control of former state assets. I mean, all sorts of things which have become, really quite distasteful otherwise. I mean, what should Europe do with the hundreds of billions of pounds of confiscated Russian assets. Should they keep those?
Well, they should be using it to help the Ukrainians, basically. I mean, you've got MH17, that Malaysian jet that got blown out of the sky by the separatists. Putin literally faked radar images, satellite images, and even got witnesses to say that a Ukrainian fighter jet shot it down. And he only got caught when they got the bodies of the pilots and found the missile fragments in them, and obviously not bullets. The guy can't be trusted at all. He's a habitual liar.
Well, he may very well be, but then the question is, how do you bring him and the others to the table? Mike in Coventry, thank you for that. Sue says, James, little big men having a row in the playground, little man's ego syndrome, can't face the fact that he's little, not as important as the others in the room. Territory is won and lost every century with bullied squabbling. That's life. Lisa says, your comment about J.D. Vance not knowing where Europe is... Oh, I've lost that one. Oh, it's probably for the best. Oh, yeah, no, here we go. Your comment about J.D. Vance not knowing where Europe was very patronising and sneering. Oh, well, I'm so sorry about that. Well, he probably doesn't. I don't know, I was just giving a view and opinion. Anyway, if you want to join the conversation, you are very welcome to do so. 87222 is the number to send a text. If you want to send a WhatsApp, 0344 499 1000 is that. James, you can't grow an economy with a finite amount of money. It can't grow. The key is to understand that flow needs to increase, resulting in an increase in tax take. Spending by the rich, their vast money pots, is the key to it, says Brian. From Max in Norwich, if there's a reduction in hours, we were talking about going to 4-day weeks before, to less than 32, when changing from 4-day week, does this mean that enables people to claim universal credit and any associated benefits that come with it? Might this be another reason why there's so many people calling for it? There's a thought. Meanwhile, Rob says, what a load of rubbish about 4-day week. We all know that someone will do it and they'll admit that they don't like work before going to an office or factory. If you can do more in less than 40 hours, then perhaps you were working before and you weren't working that hard or that well. There we go. The many more texts and messages coming through. Plus, we're going to be joined in the studio by Steve Denyer. That's coming up next on Talk.
think you have to ask, why is there this incompetence and why was this allowed to happen? And I think naturally people will say it's because there's a great deal of prejudice within the BBC.
Exactly.
And there's far too many people within the institution who just cannot be trusted to approach admittedly very sensitive matters of geopolitics in a professional manner.
A lot of people at the BBC will take a look at that incredibly pro-Palestine documentary and say, that looks like the truth to me, because they'll believe anything that is anti-Israel.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
28 minutes past 9 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation, talking about Keir Starmer's visit to the United States of America and indeed Volodymyr Zelensky. The verbal bust-up that took place in the Oval Office, and I'm asking you, how do you respond to what's happened in the last 48 hours? 0344 499 1000. Let's go very quickly to Vernon, who's in Staffordshire. Vernon, good morning.
Oh, it's like meeting up with an old friend. Hello, James.
Hi, it's like, it's like I'm back, Vernon. It's like I'm back.
I turned on this morning as I was taking the horse car for a drive, and there he is, Lenny. Hello, James. He was there. I realise you're back. Amazing.
I know. Well, look, sometimes... And by the way, I think I can give you a heads up that I'm going to be back at the end of March as well. Yeah, I know.
Oh, I should book
know.
it.
Well, so will I. I have to clear the diary. But Vernon, you rang in, presumably not just to say, oh, how exciting you're back. You must have something to say on the whole last 48 hours.
I have lots to say. Your Labour activist guest earlier, I was really, really incensed. The reason people don't believe Labour is because they've lied. Pure and simple.
But what I find so interesting, and I guess where I wanted to get to with that, is that I understand Labour policy and manifesto, but what I don't understand is if something isn't actually going to be life-changing or make the difference, then why are you doing it? In the sense that if for example, we can all understand that regardless of your views on green energy and pollution and all that sort of business, we all know that if you use less energy, or if it's cheaper or more efficient, people will gravitate to it if it's the right thing to do or if it's less expensive. If you're making something more expensive and you're trying to use some kind of justification that, oh, the world's going to end if we don't, I'm afraid it doesn't wash, because other people are doing the other thing. And it's not about making a moral decision or otherwise. What we do in this country compared to what everybody else is doing all across... I mean, you know, you have a look at the amount of munitions that have gone off on the world and around the world, which have probably contributed and done so much, you know, that, oh, well, I just insulated my house and used 3 grams less of gas. And it makes no difference. And here we are taxing ourselves, getting rid of power sources, stopping great and amazing businesses doing their jobs, fracking and drilling for oil and gas and all these things, and using that money to invest for our futures and all that stuff. We're saying, oh, no, we mustn't because the planet might end. Well, it's not going to end. And frankly, those changes are not going to make a scrap of difference.
James, you've clearly got people within Labour that are not business people. OK, the business is the catalyst to life. If businesses are profitable, they employ people. If they employ people and are profitable, they make money. If they make money, then ultimately they pay tax.
And all of those things are
generate income.
And all of those things are spot on. I mean, this message says, James, I'm a farmer of beef. Can Joe, who was here before, help me with this 4-day week thing? I don't have a margin to afford staff, leave, pension and salary. Productivity is a problem. I've always said my next job would have to have 6 months holiday twice a year. Can he advise me? I mean, you know, and this is the point, is that there's no reality check when it comes to this. You know, if you've got a job that allows you, or people can filter in or filter out, or you can, you know, you've got the resource behind it, you can have the luxury of a 4-day week. But for many of people, it's simply, you know, it simply doesn't work. Vernon, really nice to chat. I'm going to leave you now because I've got greatness in the studio. Are you excited about that?
Really? And who is greatness? Please do tell. I'm a bit worried about your guest these days, James. Who have you got?
I'm actually going to leave you on the line, Vernon, just for a second, because now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and indeed all of you who are listening and what I wanted to give him a big up, because the ident is so terrible that he's going to feel as if he's not cared for. It's this.
Steve Denyer, Entertainment News Roundup.
Hey, look, Vernon, it's Steve Denyer off of the Wireless.
Oh, no, proper man. A legend.
A legend.
I can't hear Vernon, but great to be on with you.
Yeah, no,
good
I'm
morning.
going to get rid of Vernon because he can't hear you, Vernon. But
Right.
That's very kind that you said some nice words. Steve Denyer is almost glowing with excitement, and he's. I I think you're quite... I mean, I know you get on quite well with David and all that stuff.
You're my early morning brother, though.
Yeah, you see,
we're
we have a special bond for many, many years, you see. When I came in every morning to do the early breakfast, we would say good morning early breakfast to each other.
We did.
We would share notes about things going on. We would wring our hands at things that were not going right. We would delight at things that were going well. And here you are, and I'm sort of allowed back into the building, and you are regularly never left out of the building.
It's a great thing to see you. Those 4 o'clock meetings, 3:30 a.m. meetings are quite a special thing, aren't they? They're the rawest form of human emotion.
Yeah, I don't miss some aspects of that. I miss you.
You look remarkably fresher.
It's not surprising, actually. That's the thing. I mean, I was looking like I've been dug up on occasion. Such was the death. But
10 hours of makeup for this,
Yeah, exactly.
You'd want your money back.
Looks like they're slathered it on. Anyway, let's talk about entertainment news. Gene Hackman, just very sad news, and it would appear as if we're sort of there's more and more aspects of this story which is just so extraordinary.
I mean, really, it's sent shockwaves around the world. He's such a legendary actor, such a well-known actor, and to die in this,
it seems as if it happened some time ago.
Yeah, I mean, the very latest is the sheriff giving the press conference last night, revealing a horrifying length of time that they're dead. They're putting it to, they've kind of looked at his pacemaker, and the last form of activity was actually February the 17th, which is 9 days ago, 10 days ago. So it would appear, this story getting even more tragic, day by day, hour by hour, that, he was lying dead in a mudroom, she was in the bathroom. You've got the German Shepherd dog in a closet. I mean, obviously, Caroline Faraday gave you the details an hour ago, but it really is shocking stuff. And who knows? I mean, it's a bit like the start of a crime scene investigation.
And so, people said, "Oh, they took their lives," and I think there is a lot more to come out of this. And just, for anybody, I mean, inevitably the name resonates, and then you hear, films like French Connection, all that, those things, but an enormous body of work.
Absolutely, and depending on how old you are and when you grew up, everyone has got their set favourite Gene Hackman moments. Mine, the Poseidon Adventure, which I absolutely loved. I mean, looking at it now, it looks like a budget Titanic, but I grew up with that movie. I loved that movie.
Titanic was the movie that never ended. I mean, it sort of went on, and then suddenly you thought, oh, right, it's coming to an end now, and then it didn't.
Well, it was like 2 movies sewn together, wasn't it? Because you had the accident and the love story. But anyway, going back to...
But it did go on. And it was just like, Cameron, it's the same with Avatar. It's just like, oh my God, am I ever going to get... And people like fawning over it. And the reason I mentioned that is that we're sort of in award season, and there's a lot of fawning that goes on.
Yeah.
And I mean, surely, one of those speeches, I wish somebody would sometimes stand up and when somebody's won a prize and just go, actually,
no.
Well done for the prize, but that was... cack. It was so boring, badly acted. What are you doing? I'm so pleased you got a gong. Bravo.
Yeah.
Sarky. Now get out.
Do you know, we'll get onto the Oscars in a moment, but I'm sure they probably ripped up, the schedule when it's on tomorrow. I'm sure there will be a Gene Hackman tribute. Some kind of moment. I would say, if you want to say, I mean, for me, it was Superman in the 80s, Sunday afternoon, watching one of the... He was in the 3 kind of pivotal, the huge movies, him and Christopher Reeve, and we've lost both of them now,
We have... But question for you, award ceremonies. Is there any point in watching them? They are so dull.
Well, so we're going to get on to the Brit Awards tonight and the Oscars tomorrow night. I think... the kind of...
Brit Awards is slightly different because it's basically a concert punctuated by people who turn up on stage and may or may not behave badly.
Yeah.
But it's actually about whether it's been curated well. And if it's been curated well, it's a brilliant pop show.
Yeah.
But an awards ceremony, which is basically little clips of films, you can have if you have a piece of music...
Yeah.
And somebody's performing it start to finish, you can enjoy that.
Yeah.
If you have an award ceremony for movies, they're only going to play you little clips, and it's quite a lot of clips of quite a lot of movies that you don't want to see.
Absolutely.
And then people doing gushing... Actors rarely should be allowed off script.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're actors, because they're very good at acting. They're not very often good at just... And I don't want to hear all this gushing stuff about your mum and your dad and their struggle now. Don't care.
And some of these award ceremonies go on for like 9 hours. You know, I think it's the Grammys. There's like 90-odd awards. Thankfully, we just get to see, you know, the big winners and the huge acceptance speeches.
Am I just being cynical?
Well, I think it depends on how invested you are. You know, with the Oscars this year, I've seen quite a few movies. It's been a great thing week by week, so I feel quite invested. I have an opinion. Whereas if you don't really care...
Yeah, but you'd have an opinion if you hadn't seen it.
Lots of us will watch the Brits. And
You
it's
didn't care
interesting
about that. I thought that was a hilarious compliment.
When you watch the Brits with your parents, it's a different experience because your parents haven't heard of half the artists, and you know, as a kid, you love it. But,
who's going to win a Brit then?
The Brit Awards, I would say, I would say Sam Fender's probably going to win. He's had the biggest, shifted album unit so far this year.
And it is. Let's not forget, it is the record industry patting itself on the back.
Yes, the internal voting. There's public voting as well.
And it's about selling more records. It's also about sales. So it's not about artistic merit and you know, great, wonderful things that we've all really enjoyed. It's basically who sold the most stuff, and also who's got the potential to sell the most stuff if we just re-zhuzh it up. And it's a little bit like, you know, there are certain things that you can do leftovers and certain things you can't.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
a sort of a Sam Fender album that's done really well, you can reheat it and it's just like, oh yeah, that'll go well.
Yeah.
An album that's kind of fallen off a cliff, nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly. Coldplay in there, Taylor Swift in there, Sabrina Carpenter's going to be performing. That's a big name. The Brits has given us lots of stuff over the years.
But also, there is going to be, we hear, a 1D sort of...
I was just going to say
some
that.
kind of thing.
So...
Oh, did I preempt?
They were gonna, I think, get back together after the Liam thing, but apparently it's just too painful. And I think they were scared of the optics to do a happy pop song after a tribute. There's going to be some kind of video tribute, maybe montage, maybe interviewing the band
I would
separately.
really like to see some kind of 1D something.
Would be
at some
nice,
point.
wouldn't
it? Basically, it's closure. A little bit like... You know, whenever you look at a sort of like a Beatles retrospective, you know, they always play that final performance that took place, you know, on the roof of a West End office building, or their office building, in the West End in Savile Row, and it's an iconic performance, and it's brilliant, and it's great, and it's kind of closure to that. But that was, you know, their last time that they were seen sort of in public together, and I'm sort of fascinated by that story. But one day they didn't sort of have that closure.
No, and it's been a series of kind of fallouts, the band members doing their own thing. I just wonder if they're thinking this is a bit too soon.
I think it probably is.
Like, you know, kind of 4 months since, and there's still the legal wrangling, still mystery surrounding Liam's. You know, it's a big, shocking showbiz story, really, of last year. So it'd be interesting to see what happens at the Brits. It's kind of live. There's like a minute delay tonight when
it's
it starts
probably
at
for the best.
8:15. But we remember the Sam Fox, Mick Fleetwood. We remember Jarvis Cocker jumping on stage, mooning where Michael Jackson was doing the other song. Madonna being wrenched off that stage 10 years ago with the Cape
Brandon
incident.
Blanc.
So, of course, yes.
And also Chumbawamba.
John Prescott. Soaking.
And I've been to the Brits a few times.
I mean, it's a great ceremony, isn't it? I think it's kind of lost.
I was there when Jerry did her thing, basically the whole solo thing.
Were you?
Yes, I was there.
And how did that go down live?
Well, I was with the people who were doing it. They were very pleased.
Yeah.
Anyway, just before I let you go, movie of the weekend.
Movie of the weekend, Showgirl, The Last Showgirl. This is Pamela Anderson. This is Francis Ford Coppola's granddaughter who's directing. Can I show you a little bit? I've got a little clip for you.
Apparently you're staying, so I thought you were
okay, all right.
You're staying?
Am I? If you want me to stay, I'd love to.
All right, well, you're staying because we're going to show a clip, so we'll do that. I don't know. I can't.
I'm taking your lead.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but we all know that. Anyway, we'll get more from Steve Denyer, and we're going to be taking your calls next on Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, Steve Denier's with me, and we've been going through some of the things before we come back to your calls, which I promise we will do. And I'm so sorry I haven't got to all the messages. I've been a bit slack, frankly, Steve Denier. I mean, I'm amazed that, somebody hasn't hauled me out and said, James, you haven't been reading the messages quickly enough. You're or maybe it's just because I'm popular and there's too much coming in.
Well, I just want to say, it's like you've never been away. I mean, you're back in the
the bank account
saddle.
doesn't say that. Oh, I just said that out loud. No, look, it's lovely to be back, and I think that sometimes when a show comes to an end, and of course things do come to an end, and you think, oh, I wonder if I'm ever going to be in that building again, or ever come back and think. But actually, I've been back quite a lot, and it's quite nice to come back at normal times of the day.
Well, you're a lovely person. You're very easy to work with, and you're great at what you do. And I think that's always half.
And I annoy people when they come into the studio, and we have some really good rows. I haven't annoyed you yet, but what we must do though is that there are some bits and pieces that you want to look ahead to, and I guess for us to perhaps see some of the things which are up for these big gongs.
Yeah, let's talk about the Oscars. Can I show you a little clip now? This is of a movie that's up for 10 Oscars, and it could quite possibly...
I assume you picked a sort of quite a noisy bit, so if you're listening and not watching, but if you are wanting to watch, and you'll be able to watch it, you can find us on YouTube, or if you are listening, then hopefully you'll get the gist. Is that?
This is The Brutalist. Take a look.
Tell me, why is an accomplished foreign architect shoveling coal here in Philadelphia?
I'm afraid it is not so simple.
Over 800,000 square feet of surface area?
It's ambitious.
We tolerate you. So then! You can't, sir. You cannot.
Yes, I can!
Promise you won't let it drive you mad.
Brutalist. What's it all about?
So you haven't seen it. I was wondering, could James Mack sit in a cinema for 4 hours and watch a movie? This is
it is split with the half time.
The 15-minute interval in the middle.
Fine.
So it's like watching kind of two long movies sewn together. It's an incredible watch. It's a poetic watch. It's got Guy Pearce from Neighbours. Was Guy Ritchie in Neighbours? No. It's an incredible story in two parts.
So Brutalist presumably refers to the architecture that it discusses.
Yeah, it's a very clever movie. So you will see in the movie this great kind of he is a wonderful creator of buildings and what was going on in his back life, off the back end of the war.
And given that that my background is in real estate and property, would I like it?
I think you would. Is
it funny?
No. It's quite barbaric. Well, it's very barbaric, but that's the thing. You kind of watch it, and it's.
Is it a true story?
It's a tough watch. No, it's not. No, but it's a really great film.
You say that.
Not one of the best films, but you know what? It's more of an.
If it's not one of the best films, why is it up for all these Oscars then?
Well, we'll see how many it wins tomorrow.
Oh.
But it's an event. It's very rare when you go and see a movie and it's a proper event. Everyone was talking about the length, and what's really great about this film is the soundtrack is.
Everyone's talking about the length of it. It's like ball off. It's either good or it's not. If something's really good,
I've already told you I enjoyed it. A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie. In my eyes, I think should deserve. I think Timothy Chalamet to sing, to play guitar, to act.
I went to see Bob Dylan live a few months ago. It was one of the worst gigs I have ever.
So maybe you should have seen this film and saved you the
maybe.
But
I don't
evening.
particularly like his music on the best of times. But now he just goes and he mumbles away. And the only decent thing was when he played the harmonica.
So given a 2-hour movie that's kind of condensed his life is a lot more interesting than Your Night Out. So maybe you should watch that. Because it was a really great experience. I enjoyed it. And the fact is, the work that Timothy Chalamet must have put in to do that, I think he deserves at least some kind of,
I like the Chalamet.
Sebastian Stan, who was in The Apprentice, now this is the movie about Donald Trump,
yes.
I really enjoyed. Now, I think he should win something. I really loved that film. I think it was a great snapshot of late 70s, early 80s, and how the man become the person that we know now.
Have you got a clip of that?
No.
Oh.
But you should see it.
Okay, what else have you got?
So otherwise, I've got a clip of The Last Showgirl with Pamela Anderson, and this is the movie that's out this weekend. Would you like to see a bit? I really like this. this.
Okay, great.
Let's do it.
And I can't imagine my life without it. Doing a job that you don't really love, that's hard.
It kind of reminded me of. Did you remember the last Dallas Buyers Club years ago? It's got that kind of seedy. Underbelly, kind of Vegas, somebody who's kind of peaked in her career, but things aren't going that well anymore.
Right.
And it's the perfect role for Pamela Anderson. She plays it beautifully. Some might say, you know, the face of Baywatch in the 90s and stuff. Maybe she's kind of had that similar kind of thing. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we must just finish on a little bit of discussion about Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
How many episodes have been made of Doctor Who?
Oh, go on then. So over since the
beginning,
since the 60 years,
yes.
I would say about 900.
Not far off, 884.
Look at that! Look at that! Who's your favourite Doctor Who?
I think you go for your Doctor.
Of
my
course.
Doctor was Tom Baker.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I liked John Pertwee. I thought he was great.
Yeah.
And I did like the revamp. I thought Eccleston and Tennant both very, very good. But I would still Tom Baker.
We've got a problem with Doctor Who recently because the ratings are not there. In fact, they've been absolutely plummeting.
It's because they've gone go woke, go broke.
And I think shooting out the current Doctor Who's going to quit. I mean, everyone's saying that, you know, he's very nervous because he thinks it's kind of a dent to his career. You know, is he going to be the person who's ruined Doctor Who? But we were talking about the James Bond thing recently, and you can't mess with something.
Hey, that's in the papers today. Very quickly.
It's great.
I'm not allowed to because we've run out of time, but. In the papers today, they talk about this new deal that they've done with Amazon.
Yeah,
where
what
basically
do you think?
the Barbara Broccoli is sold out. Amazon have got what they wanted, which was basically to use the franchise and do all this stuff. If they do what Disney Plus has done, and they've kind of undermined the whole Star Wars franchise by pumping out all this stuff, some of it has been quite good, a lot of it terrible.
I'm nervous.
I'm very, very nervous, and I think it's just money talking. And if you don't have the creative control to say, this is what we must have, we will not do that.
They're ruining it. They're ruining it. This is exactly. So there's going to be a Eurovision Doctor Who, and apparently it's going to be the most expensive Doctor Who episode ever. And everyone's saying, "Oh my goodness, come on, give me a break." Go back to basics with Doctor Who. You want to see, the Tom Baker, Peter Davidson.
Give me some jelly babies. Give me a nice big.
I want the Master. I want Davros. I want the Cybermen, and I want
Davros.
Davros.
I want Davros.
That was Davros, wasn't it? Or was that a place in Switzerland?
No, you're thinking my friend Stavros. Anyway, there we go, Steve Denyer. Thank you very much indeed. We might even see you tomorrow here on Talk.
President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were absolutely in the right. And I think Zelensky took some blows, and he deserved all of them.
Over the past 3 years, I think he has been raised onto a pedestal, a sort of beatification process. And I'm quite pleased to see him knocked off that. That said, you know, I think I don't want Ukraine to be left all on its own.
No, that
seems to be what Trump is threatening now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, I promised I'd go straight to calls. Let's do it. John is in Sutton. Hello, John.
Hi, James.
Hello, John.
Yeah.
So, talking a little bit about, just to refresh everybody's memory, Keir Starmer's visit to the US, Volodymyr Zelensky's verbal bust-up with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and I'm trying to work out how you and indeed others respond to the last 48 hours, John.
Well, for me, it's about this. The size of the challenge that the West is facing is massive, James.
Right.
Russia are allied with China, as we know, and Iran and North Korea, and Europe cannot deal with that on its own.
So, say, for example, if China decided to have a little pop shot and take Taiwan, and maybe America wanted our help or otherwise, should we be offering them our support?
We're already signed up to helping them. We're in AUKUS. 3 Chinese warships were in the Tasman Sea carrying out live drills. For people that don't know, James, that's the sea between Australia and New Zealand. That's how far down they are. This is pure intimidation. These challenges are massive.
So how much more? How much more have we got to spend on defence?
A lot more, and we need to get in line with the US. Stop.
And is that why then?
Trump.
So is that why Trump was perhaps positive towards Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer started that road to moving towards that amount? I mean, if we can go back to Cold War times, 80s, we were spending 5% of GDP, and I know that GDP we shouldn't necessarily be talking in terms. We should be talking in terms of actual money spent, but we're not spending enough on defence, are we?
Of course not. We should take all the foreign aid budget and put it on defence now.
But arguably, we have to get even more money than that. Where do we get it from? What gets cut?
Well, James, for me, it would have to raise taxes. Because, like I said, this challenge is massive, James.
But we've got...
It's coming.
Yeah, but hang on a second. If you raise taxes much further, John, the economy grinds to a halt. If the economy grinds to a halt, your cost of debt goes up. And that means that all the debt that we have becomes more expensive to service, which then means that more of your taxpayers' money is actually not going into what you need to spend it on. It's going into paying off that debt. So if you raise tax because your economy can't deal with that amount of debt, that's the problem, which is why people keep saying grow the economy. But we've had no measure so far that actually grows the economy.
That's why we need a reform government. And I bow to your superior knowledge on that, James. We need heads like you to get round a table and see how can we raise this money for defence.
Well, listen, if somebody gave me the call, I might very well give them that advice. Meanwhile, John, thank you very much indeed for your call. I must turn my attention, however, to what's happening on this radio station in literally a couple of minutes' time. Peter Cardwell is here. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, James.
Nice to see you.
No, and you too. Big question we're asking today, Zelensky versus Trump. Whose side are you on? Who was right in that debate? We've got the Shadow Defence Minister, Mark Francois, who'll be sitting in this seat in a few minutes' time. We've got an expert panel of people in Ukraine, right in Europe, in America, loads of different people who are giving us their views on the big diplomatic row. Also tomorrow, massive European summit. I think he was bullied. I think he was dominated by Trump. It was a long discussion. It was actually about 45 minutes that they were sitting in those seats.
But do you think that Trump was doing what he was always doing, which is if he knows somebody's steadfast, he's basically saying, you're going to have to move to get something dealt with, something agreed. Yeah. And so he was doing the classic deal thing, and I don't think Zelensky was well prepared for that.
I think Zelensky overreacted. You've got two very emotional people